Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with
Ivan
Ozerets. And on the line, we have Davey and Andy. They've been on before, Davey Anderson and Andy Fitzell.
Очень хорошо.
Russian. Say something in Russian, Ivan.
I like what Andy said. Привет, как дела? Hello, how are you? What else did you say that you threw in some?
Очень хорошо.
Очень хорошо is very good.
Очень хорошо means very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one.
We had a Russian speaker call us today. His daughter, she's gone on, done really well. She's, I think, been ranked size 1 in Canada. And the age group's coming up. I think she's in 16s now. But I said, yeah, I'm sitting right next to Ivan, and I'm giving him a tutorial in Russian. And then I said, no, actually, I think I could tutor Ivan on 2 subjects, and he could tutor me on 20. But let's get rolling now. I was going to ask you about the Mike Tyson fight, but let's go with short socks. Before we got on the air, Andy, how did you know that Dave Anderson was wearing short socks?
Well, he was in a video with short socks, and it was a serve drill, and then I said something about it's a great tip, great drill. Now go get some socks, and he kind of thought I meant the sock drill, serving drill with the tube sock, but that's not what I meant exactly.
Quickly for our listeners of baseball, it's an old baseball trick. You take a tube sock. A baseball weighs about 6 ounces. Tennis ball is 2 ounces. So put 3 tennis balls in a sock. And if your palm goes up, the energy goes down. And as the great late Vic Braden would say, if you were a cowboy and you had palm up, you'd lasso your own horse.
I was going to say it is a pet peeve of mine, but Dave's forgiven. He's got a reason for it, but.
Well, let's go over that reason. First of all, you don't want to hear some kids say, I don't want to get a farmer's tan. That's what I used to hear back in the day. I don't want to get a farmer's tan.
Yeah.
Poor farmers. Why are you picking on the farmers?
Yeah, I'm a farmer. Nothing to do with farmer's tan. I have abnormal gastrocnemius muscles.
Stop right there.
And abnormal muscles in the gastro area. My blood's been, gravity's worked against me. Varicosities. I got them from my mom. And past 15 years, I've had 3 procedures. Actually, my last one was last week. And you can go the opposite extreme and wear the compression sock, all the thigh high compression sock. And I did that last week for 2 weeks. And but that's a little uncomfortable. So a little better circulation. When I
good
don't
for airplanes.
I think of
they are.
When I think of surgery for you, I think a hair transplant. But I had a Polish coach tell a tennis player a long time ago, a couple tennis players actually, wear regular socks. It'll make your legs look bigger and stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, when legends die, you see Sampras, Agassi, Roddick. Once they retired, they all went to the short socks, and it just doesn't look the same to me.
My son was transferring from one school to the next, and he was being recruited by John Roddick when he was at Oklahoma. And then John was calling me up, and I said, I only have one thing to say. And he goes, what's that? So you do me this one favor. I said, I'll vote for Oklahoma. He goes, yeah, what's that? I said, tell your brother. He's got to start wearing socks again. And John Roddick goes, I can't believe you said that. He goes, I've been giving him so much SHIT for not wearing socks.
Yep.
It's,
yeah.
But actually, to take care of your feet, I know they have some high-tech socks now, but it used to be you should wear 2 thin pairs of socks. Thin to protect your feet. I gave lessons to Jimmy Connors, his podiatrist from the St. Louis area. Foot doctor, so he used to. His son used to come and work with me, but Connors used to go home to get his feet taken care of. Yeah, I've been in the ATP room where you see so many times they put on this like really thin tape, like a very thin layer of fiberglass. I mean, tennis players, maybe that's our podcast should be about. They got to take care of their feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's actually real. I wear barefoot shoes.
What are barefoot shoes?
Whenever I can. Yeah, because
first of all, what is that?
That's an oxymoron.
Yeah, barefoot shoes. They all the world class athletes like myself, Jordan, all those guys. But no, because when you're on your feet so much, I mean, I wish I would have discovered it in my first, I just started doing it about 5 years ago because my feet were just getting beat up from being on the court all the time. But I wish I would have wore either running shoes or barefoot shoes. And they just basically, it's the opposite of what you tend to do where you, and some people swear by it. It's worked for me. They just basically put such a thin shoe that you feel like you're barefooted, and it strengthens the tendons and ligaments in your feet, and you avoid kind of the foot problem that I think you encounter when you're, I'm on my feet 12 hours a day minimum, and on that hard court. But when I wear those things, I tell you, my feet are totally different within a month.
Andy, what was the name of the sock that Vic Braden used to endorse? Thorlo, maybe?
Yeah, Thorlo. Yeah.
Yeah, no, actually, towards the end of Vic's life, I talked to the owner of that company, Vic. Vic wanted me to help him out to put him in touch with more pros to take care of their feet. We just had there was a high quality sock. I mean, I don't even know if they're still on the market.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
they've improved them.
Yeah. Jody Johnson was just up here. We did a podcast with him. He wears those socks where, separate place for each toe. What kind of sock is that?
Yeah.
What's that called?
I don't know. It's a special type of sock.
I have them.
those are similar to the barefoot shoe, right? I mean, the barefoot shoe.
The barefoot shoe doesn't. Mine don't have the separate toes like that. I know which ones you're talking about. But those socks, they're awesome. They spread your toes out, and you can walk again normally. I don't think most people even encounter this stuff because they're probably not on their feet, so brutalizing their body. But those things work. Unfortunately, a lot of ladies use them when they paint their nails, their toenails. So they spread your feet, your toes apart, and it's amazing.
I've had problems with my feet for a long, long time. Like today, went out for a 2-hour walk, made a lot of phone calls. Everybody should really take care of your feet. Once again, you want to have an expert really take care of calluses on the bottom of your feet. So what I did over time is went down so far that the scar tissue, I have keratomas. So it's like having little M&Ms on the bottom of your feet. The skin grows outward. And that's one nice thing, Andy. You spent so much time in Europe to go to a foot care place. Here in the U.S., it's like you have to go see a specialist for everything. The orthopedic doesn't work with the physical therapist. The physical therapist doesn't work with a diagnostic coach, and on and on and on. But so I went to 3 different doctors. I've been doing this now 50 years, and 2 out of the 3 told me to I'd have to have my feet broken. My feet are so flat from being on the court all the time. I remember it was a little painful, but it actually worked well because it just would soften. So you could you just have to take the dead skin. But you can buy these little things. Like, I'm not sure what it's called, but it's acid really burning into the bottom of your foot. It's not that painful. It's it's there. But take care of your feet.
And this conversation really getting me pumped up to have a nice steak dinner tonight or something.
I actually had I had a Russian coach growing up when I was a teenager, and I walked in one day to a session, and he looked at my feet. I was wearing short socks, and he says, "With those socks, you look like a girl." And he's like, "Don't wear those socks." It's like, okay, so lesson learned. And the next time I show up, long socks all the way up to the middle of my calf. He stopped me. Like before we started listening, he's like, "With those socks, you look like a golfer. Don't wear those socks." But it's interesting. You look at pros, someone like Dimitrov, he actually wears 3 pairs of socks. And in an interview, he's like, "Yeah, I just feel like I'm playing on a cloud." And there's something about it because I used to wear just 1 pair of socks, and I'd get blisters on the bottom of my feet. And then I started wearing 2, and I've been wearing 2 ever since. And I never get blisters on the bottom of my feet anymore.
With prisoners of war, what they would do is beat their feet, seriously, because you couldn't tell if they'd been tortured if you just are whacking the bottom of their feet. That'll be on the quiz. No, but seriously.
There was one player top tenor that, in recent years it did well. An American player. You guys know who it is? That wore short socks.
American?
Marty Fish.
Marty Fish,
Oh,
yeah.
Dan Evans also.
Marty Fish, they call it.
Dan Evans, yeah.
I didn't hesitate there because game recognizes game.
Marty Fish, the term "great barroom athlete." He's. You go into a bar and there's pinball games, there's a shuffleboard, dartboard. Everybody raves about how well he plays golf. But I remember being at Lightning games, and where I would sit and he would sit is he drank a lot of beer. When he finally got in shape, he was in the top 10 in the world. I mean, that guy, other than a little dodgy forehand, he had such a complete game. I one time made a video for a kid from Vero Beach. They're from Minnesota originally. But Tom Fish, he's his dad. He's a tennis teaching pro. And so I said, well, you want to get a second opinion? This is back in the VHS tapes. Here's a slow motion analysis of your son's essential strokes. So they took the tape and they gave it to Marty's dad. Marty's dad called me up, and it was very nice. He said, I agree with everything on that tape. I mean, that's like, with talking to Matt Clore, who's now back with the USTA, and Dave Ramos. Matt's title is Senior Manager Analytics Coach Education. Let me say that one more time. That's going to be on the quiz too. Senior Management Analytics Coach Education. So, Andy, you were there with us, and Dave Ramos, he does the analytics, who's been with the USTA a long time, and he came out to be filmed, and he one time told me that you can't really disagree with what we say, from a tennis teaching standpoint. Matt, recently they're bringing it back, that high performance coach class, what's it called? Course?
Certification?
Yeah. Andy, you're high performance, aren't you?
Long time ago.
Dave, you're not high performance, are you? You didn't go to the course, right? Yeah, that's your problem, Anderson. You didn't go to that course.
Yeah.
No wonder.
They don't let people with short socks in.
With
go ahead and just hang up now, Dave.
I'm actually appealing it.
Chris Valverde, a great guy. He listens to our podcast. He introduces himself to me as a low performance coach all the time. I do that. He will come up, hi, I'm Sam. I'm a high performance coach. You've heard me say it. I'm the wise guy. Yeah, I'm Steve. I'm a low performance coach. But anyway, they brought the course back, and Matt told me that Ramos told me, he said, Matt, you're going to like this. And he put up a photo of Braden. And that comes back to, physical laws. Can you, why don't you give us that theme, Yvonne? See if you got it down. That's going to be on the quiz too.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Can you say it in Russian? Say it in English first.
Dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production. No coach's opinion or any unique theory.
How would you say it in Russian? It's always difficult to translate.
Tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. That'll be on the next test. With I
was going to say they've tried to send out to the graduates. Dave, sorry, you wouldn't get this, but
he's low
they
performance.
send out
They
send out.
I think I actually get it.
Did you get it? Okay.
The hold the line.
Yeah, but the link doesn't work. It goes to a login. That's the third time I keep emailing Ramos, but
yeah, I get it. I actually bought my way in.
When it comes down to sharing and hold the line, I just think of Bill Talbert. Here's a trivia question for you. Anybody online here, our two guests, Davey and Andy, who were the three best players ever out of Cincinnati? And
Bill Talbert.
J.J. Wolf's not one of them, even though Andy changed it from palm up to palm down.
Jimmy Connor.
Oh, come on, you flunk. He's not from Cincinnati. Now listen, hold up. Now, Pete Rose, we should talk about Pete Rose, is that Jimmy Connors had to be copying Pete Rose a little bit. He had definitely copied his haircut, had that bowl haircut. Bill Talbert, yeah, so let's go back to Bill Talbert. Who are the other two? One of the best commentators ever. Everybody loves him.
Oh, I know. It's
Barry McKay.
Barry McKay. Yes, he won the Italian Open. He said, "Yeah, he served volleyed and everything." He goes, "Yeah, I brought the baseline with me."
He played at Michigan, though, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then who was the third?
Third one.
1955. 1955. Won the French Open. TT.
Yeah.
CBS.
It's
Pat Summerall.
Yeah, I know his son.
Yes.
Yeah, gosh, why can't I think of his name?
Tony.
What are the in it?
Trabert.
Tony the Tiger.
Trabert,
Tony
yeah.
Trabert. I was at a
C6 graphite.
What's that?
The C6 graphite. That was the prototype for the Tony Trabert C6 graphite. I still have them.
I was at a banquet. He was speaking, and I was actually with Braden, and gosh, those guys go back a long, long time. Vic knew everybody. So this guy raised his hand and said, "Who's the greatest player of all time?" Tony Trabert said, "My mother said, I'm the greatest player of all time." I thought that was a classic answer.
Connor's from St. Louis, right?
Yeah, Belleville.
Yeah, that's why.
Belleville.
Sounds like Cincinnati.
Yeah, same thing. No, you and I did some coincidences. I love that town. We went to the. Did you go to the baseball? Were you there the year we went to the baseball game?
Yeah, that was great.
We had for the people helping us out. The coaches. We had the hot dog eating contest.
Yeah, that was great. I had 34 hot dogs.
Whoa. I think we're really helping people with the follow through on the forehand. You got to put it over to your pocket. Well, I think we should go from short socks to who saw the fight last night? Mike Tyson and
oh man,
Jake Paul.
Was that a fight?
What was the guy's name?
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul. I talked to quite a few people on the phone today, and 120 million people saw that. Amazing.
Yeah, wow.
But I'm so down. Andres Barbosa. Did you watch it last night? He goes, I watched it this morning. I'm too stupid to do that. I stayed up forever to watch that.
Yeah, we actually watched up through the third round of the women's, and then our Netflix was buffering and wouldn't come back at all.
But it's the same with me, but I have these tech skills, Anderson. You just got to go back to the beginning, start all over when that happens.
I got to tell you though, we tried. You remember I lived with my son-in-law. He was the head of the Geek Squad in his 20s for Best Buy, so he came up and tried everything. I mean, this guy could, wire anything and do anything, and no, it was just wouldn't go. I mean, we kept doing it periodically, but then eventually it just wouldn't come back.
When I have somebody with that type of skill set and they're looking over my shoulder, watching me work on a computer, I go, you don't want to watch me do this. It will drive you nuts that I go so slow.
I heard Jake Paul made 40 and Tyson 20 million. Mm-hmm. Not a bad payday.
Not a bad payday, but I actually think Rocky VI was a little bit better. But 120 million people. With Mike Tyson, how's it go? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Punched in the mouth, yeah.
Punched in the mouth. He was being interviewed by this cute little teenage girl, and poor kid said, "What do you want your legacy to be?" And did you see that? I don't believe in I don't believe in legacies. When you're dead, you're dead. It's like, whoa. Yeah. I heard some people in that line of work say that that'll make that kid's career. When you deal with a question like that, he was dropping some F-bombs. It was definitely real. With let's go on the fight a little bit. Joe McMahon, in years gone by, he was on a staff, Tennis Corporation America. If there was one, there was 22 staff members, and everybody had to get to the point where they could make a slow motion analysis. And he became very good at it. He was an excellent tennis teacher. So he was telling me he was in a hotel in New York City, elevator opens up, and Tyson came in. It was just the two of them. And McMahon, he's a big boy, he's Irishman. He used to always tell people, like, if he disagreed with somebody, he would always say, I'm going to give that guy a piece of my mind. And I would say, just don't give him a big piece. But so anyway, he would come across as a tough guy. He'd be ready to drop the gloves. But Tyson came in the elevator and just went right up to him. And, actually, Tyson, I saw her last night, he's 5'10", so McMahon's taller than that. But so it wasn't quite nose to nose, but he just came right up to him, and McMahon's going, this guy's going to kill me. Anyway, the door opened up, and but just totally psycho intimidated. But one thing I thought is their legs. Actually, I heard Barbosa. I talked to him today. He's a smart guy. I watch it in the morning. Is that I think knowing nothing about boxing, but Tyson you could just tell the guy has really good defense. I loved Muhammad Ali, his footwork, former Cassius Clay. His footwork was so good, he could just have his arms dangle down to the side. He was so fast that most boxers, get like Tyson's got both those hands right in front of his face. Who's got a story for boxing on tennis? What do you got? Anything to add? Go ahead.
I don't know, but I was just going to say with the fight, I think, Paul, he's got a longer reach by 5 or 6 inches, and he was just, giving little jabs basically the whole time. I think he could have really hurt Mike if he wanted to, if, later on when Mike was his legs were dead and he was off balance, I think.
He said exactly, out of respect. He said that afterwards. It was really an exhibition. 2-minute rounds, 8 rounds. But wow, all over the world. Big crowd. Yeah. What great tennis players were trained by boxers?
Agassi.
Agassi's father, Connor's uncle. 3 different times I hired boxers over the years to coach kids. Why do boxers have such great footwork? That the 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, the skip roping, that comes from boxing. Jack Kramer, if I could do 15 rounds, that's an hour.
Getting hit in the face is pretty good motivation to move your feet. Avoiding getting hit in the face. A kid lets the forehand go by him and it's the loss of a point, and then they're whining and nothing changes. But somebody's knuckles coming right into your face. It's just different perspective. It's kind of like Bobby Knight. The greatest motivator in the world is a bench.
Yeah. Boys, some things have gone away. I've done this before. Take 2 guys, put them in the service box, and go, all right, you're going to slap fight. And, years ago, it was just not a big deal. Now the boys look at you like they're just shocked. And then, you take a big kid, say, okay, you put your hands behind your back, and the other kid tries to slap you in the face. It's just to have a little bit of fun. Another good drill, nothing to do with boxing, but you put kids in the service box, each put their hands on their shoulders and see who can push each other out of the service box. There's this cross-country coach in the book, we talk about it often, Amazing Racers.
Mm-hmm.
And he still, when he runs cross-country practice, he'll ever be running in place and you just go, hit it. And everybody has to do a belly flop. I used to do that in tennis practice. Get out on an athletic field and get ready, hit it. Then now you do that, people just look around and go, what is this guy talking about? Because in practice, it was like, all right, summertime, I want every kid to leave here. They got to have some grass stains and some mud, some dirt on their tennis outfit. Pickup soccer is a good way to do that. But I got this. I think Davey Anderson can help us with this one. Toli Marinkovic. When I think of Mike Tyson, I think of Toli Marinkovic.
Yeah.
Toli, I looked it up. He's in San Diego, as a teaching pro in San Diego. After playing at Tyler Junior College, that's another thing too, is that people never put in their bio that they played at a junior college. It's like people never put in their bio that they went to Tennis Tech, or they don't put in their bio that they have been trained by us. We're just not big time. But Toli Marinkovic, he went to San Diego State University. They're the Aztecs, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was out there in '89, so he must have only been at Tyler Junior College for 1 year.
Yeah, he was.
So he was 2018. This comes back to Mike Tyson indirectly. He was a San Diego USPTA Pro of the Year. For our listeners, former Yugoslavia. He won numerous national championships. It's amazing. He won so many in doubles. That guy was small. He's smaller than I am, but really good athlete. Hit the ball so well, but couldn't really serve because he tossed the ball so far over his head. So he, it's funny, he marries Robin Givens. Robin Givens, look that up as well. She was married to Mike Tyson 1 year, 1988 to 1989. Now, Wikipedia had this wrong, from according to what I've been told. Toli Marinkovic married Robin Givens. Mm-hmm. And it was the fastest, shortest marriage of all time. I was told it lasted 7 minutes. So they got married in Vegas. And Wikipedia says they were married 1977 to 88. Now, Robin Givens, not married, but she has a child with the famous one and only Murphy Jensen. with so anyway, what Tolley did is he convinced her that he was wealthy, to the point where, like, this is the story I heard, and I heard it from a close friend of his. I wrote his name down. Johann Svensson. Dave Anderson. Johann Svensson. So Tolley, he knows somebody who has a private plane, and they go to pick her up in the private charter jet, and he's, it's pretending that the jet's his. I don't know. I was told they were in Vegas, so, but they met on a yacht. Had to be some, I guess, because he's a San Diego guy now. So then they go to Vegas, but then afterwards, the story goes, he told her, "I really love you, but I have to tell you something now that we're married." He said, "I'm absolutely broke." And she said, "I can't be married to you." And they just, that was it right there. What do you think of that story, Anderson?
Yeah, I mean, Tolley Marinkovic was, a player who should have, it's going to tie in really with kind of the things we're going to speak about tonight outside of short socks. And he was talented, and he, should have definitely, with a few minor adjustments, have made it, especially in doubles out on the circuit. But he was undisciplined, and, he was a really handsome kid. And if I say it like it is, he was kind of a scammer right from the beginning. I mean, he was scamming himself on his own talent level, and, carried that quality into his other parts of his life. But yeah, I've spoke to a few of his teammates from that era as well, and that's pretty much how it unfolded. It was in and out of the marriage with him.
One of his teammates is a Swedish kid. For our listeners, it was Dave Anderson, Craig Tiley. The three of us on an interim basis ran 2 tennis teams for a semester at Tyler Junior College. I was the interim coach 2 different times, because when I was the 10-year period I was there was 3 coaches. So I'm at a fundraiser in Memphis, Tennessee, and Johann Svensson comes right up to me and he goes, "I bet you don't remember my name." And at that time, I didn't have his name, but I said, "No, I don't know your name, but I remember your serve. Want me to show you?" Of course, he started laughing, and everybody in that area, "He's such a great player, such a great player." I looked him up as well. He's been at this one club in Memphis since 2002. I mean, that's 22 years, and now he's having some fun with the brain typing. He's a capital P, very flexible, easygoing guy. He's playing a lot of pickleball. But at this function, I said, "Hey, you got to tell me about Tolley Marinkovic." And I'm pretty sure this is how it played out, is Johan from Sweden came to Tyler Junior College, Tyler, Texas, and married a Tyler girl. And so she's at the function, and then she just starts telling me the Tolley story. He was so much better at cards, poker, than all his teammates. They all owed him hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So they came up with all these different things that were equivalent to it. That's worth $1. That's worth $2. And all his teammates were in debt to him. And the only one who wasn't in debt to him was Scott Stewart, the American. This is the story of And Scott Stewart, that's another story. There's a guy I would love to, we coached him, but can you imagine if you coached that guy from the time he was a little kid? Whoa, that guy would have been awesome. So I digress. I remember I was Stewart one time at a match, and I thought he was going to fight 30 spectators at one time. So anyway, like say at the cafeteria, you got to take my tray up. I'll take $1 off of the debt. You got to do my laundry, and just on and on and on. So when he was at Tyler Junior College, I was aware of this to a certain extent. Is when a college teammate comes up to you and goes, "Hey, can I pick up balls for Tolley?" I go, "What is this all about?" But it's like he had a group of workers, a group of staff members. He was royalty because these guys all owed him from losing poker games to him. But they actually, Tolley had a better serve. But that guy, Johan Svensson, I mean, I would think over time, just playing with club members, I've seen that happen with at a country club. So he's out there playing with the ladies and whatever. So he's just probably just standing still and nice and has a nice easy motion. And he doesn't realize that's what he should have done to be a better player. No, I was in Sweden. And his older brother, there was Tyler Junior College and then University of Texas at Tyler. And he married a gal who's from former Yugoslavia. She was really good. So you would have been around at that time.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but she had a beautiful game with, so what are we going to talk about? I've got these lists in front of me. I got all sorts of things in front of me. I have this from Andy's wife, Leo, the better half. Give me a number. Anybody give me a number, 1 through 52. Go ahead, Yvonne.
50. House rules.
House rules. This, last one is, it says, last thing written on this is, to be continued. Remember, your mistakes create the rules. With
Sounds like my wife.
I'll just go random. It's start your day with an achievement. Make your bed and put your clothes away. Organization. That was just on the table here. With here's something else I have. Don Meyer. Things I wish an older, experienced coach would have told me when I was young. Those are the house rules going back to Leo. Rules. Routines. For tennis players who want to get better, the routine should become rules. It's a rule. I do this every day. For people who follow our content, definitely look up Don Meyer online, the late Don Meyer basketball coach. Give me a number. Ivani, baby.
24.
24. Yeah, then we'll get into look at these names from the past. 24. Who's working for you when you are not there? Okay. Who's working for you when you're not there? I mean, that's where people have to go. Your parents, your coaches. There's a lot of people working for you when you're not there. So give me another one. Let's go with Anderson. You know the numbers 1 through. We don't want to go too high for Anderson, but give me a number, Anderson.
52.
52. How many cards in the deck? Anderson, you were the guy who used to say, you want to play 52 card pickup? You did that before some poor young kid, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of card decks, though, I think of work ethic because 2 older brothers, and in the winters, my brother Dick and I would just take a card deck down to the basement and, for years we did this at night and just flip a card over, and whatever card we flipped over, that, you had to do that push up, and we'd see who could outlast each other. So face cards were always 10, aces were 11, and, we'd see how many decks we could turn over back and forth, and just have push up contests that way and see who could outlast each other.
Push ups. This is something you won't hear anymore. It's back in the day, kids, you would take a clothespin and old playing cards, and attach them to the spokes of their bicycle. So they sounded like they had a motor on their bicycle. You don't think people are going to do that anymore? I think there's some.
Yeah.
Give me a number, somebody. Oh, so we don't have 52. You got to give me another one. We only have 50. Oh, I love 44.
About 7.
44 is teach, teach, teach. Hey, people they drop the ball hopper too quick and they don't put the hours in. Number 7, who's this from? Is this from Davey or Andy?
It's from me, John Elway. I was thinking about him for some reason.
John Elway, for the longest time, the Czech runner. What was the Czech runner? It was Vic's favorite athlete. Then he changed it to Elway. He said, my favorite athlete. I need to tell you. Yeah, Emilio Zapatek. Emilio Zapatek, he won the 5,000, 10,000 marathon. What he used to do, and we want the juniors out there that are listening to this, he would hold his breath and run as fast and far as he could, and then he'd pass out. Pain tolerance. So hey, at this time I went, I held my breath and I ran 800 yards. He also would wash his clothes by filling up the bathtub, putting the clothes in the bathtub, and then running in place. So number 7, why don't you read number 7, Ivani, baby? So why look at that for a second. Elway, why Vic said Elway is Elway was asked, what's your favorite thing about football? And he said, down by a touchdown on the 2-yard line in less than 2 minutes to go. That's what I love about football. That's a good one. Go ahead.
Number 7, newspapers buy their ink by the barrel, and you buy yours by the pen. The old adage that whoever has the piece of chalk last wins certainly applies to the print media. They always have the last word.
That's kind of deep. That's kind of deep. You don't even see newspapers anymore. Amazing.
The next one's cool. It says, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Whenever someone gives you or the program something, they will eventually want to be paid back in some fashion.
That sounds like my old man. No such thing as a free lunch.
Man, these are good. Make each day your masterpiece. This is all we are assured of having, so let's embrace the precious present. John Wooden's father gave him this advice.
Say that one more time.
Make each day your masterpiece. That is all we are assured of having, so let's embrace the precious present. John Wooden's father gave him this advice.
Actually, Dave Anderson, young Malhar Patel has found his way out to your place several times, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we have a podcast with, for our listeners, if they want to go back, I believe Malhar is reading the list, and he reads off a pearl of wisdom from the late Don Meyer. Then I comment on it. She, the famous basketball coach, passed away at Tennessee. Who's got the name? Come on.
Yeah, she was just
Pat Summerall.
Pat Summit. Pat Summit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing we're trying to do with our podcast, our free content, is carry the torch. And, we can't let so many great people gone before us be forgotten. But anyway, she was mentored by Don Meyer. And what an amazing job she did. I one time was in Knoxville with Austin Krychek, and we were staying with his family. And at that time, Pat Summit was that, or I knew her health wasn't very good. I said, asked family, Pat Summit? She goes, yeah, she's a really good friend of ours. And the next day, I went out to dinner with the UT coach, and, we're talking to, all hours of the morning with the 2 or 3 coaches from the staff, just talking like we're talking right now. Let's go with, we have the boys 12s, girls 12s, start going from 1962 to 2024. Amazing list. This is U.S. national hardcourt champions. This is amazing. I just think, I see Luann Spadia. Now, Dave and I, we had really nothing to do with Luann Spadia, but I made a pre-post video with Arthur Cohen, Carly Bassett, Robbie Seguzo, Vince Spadia Sr., and said, no, we can fix her serve in 20 minutes. And remember, Vince Sr. was all excited, said, okay. And I said, no, what she needs to do is just for 3 weeks, come out and go really slow. And great enthusiasm. He had her playing matches that afternoon. But then we have the 18s that we go, this goes back to 1916 for the boys, but only to 1918. It wasn't fair for the girls back then. I think we go random. Let's go with the 12s. See if we can even, sometimes we won't remember anyone. But on the other hand, we could. There's so many insights with, we had talked about Nadal a couple podcasts ago. And when he won the 12s, everybody, I think, who's reading about players like Rafa know this. When he won the 12s in Spain, they had a party, and then Uncle Tony said, okay, we're going to read these 25 names, 25 boys going back 25 years. And then I want you to raise your hand if you've ever heard of the player. So the point was that he said, well, let's have a nice dinner, but there's nothing to celebrate when you win the national 12s. I think there's obviously a little bit to celebrate, that's for sure. Go with the 12s first. give me a year, guys. Let's go. Just go boys in the year or girls in the year. Why don't you go, Dave?
64.
Boy or girl?
Both.
Oh, that's a good answer.
Go boy first. Yeah, boy and girl both.
All right, that's good. So, in 1964, I know Connor was born in 1952, arguably the best age group for men's tennis in the U.S. I mean, it's just Gottfried and Stockton and Salmon and Dibbs, and it just goes on. Tanner, how many great players became top 10 players? Of course, that was before the Berlin Wall came down and tennis became global. But Brian Gottfried, and then Patty Ann Reese, 1964. So this is where I'm an amateur historian. Brian Gottfried, Marty Reason said about Brian Gottfried, he's ranked 14 in the United States and 9 in the world. That's how many great Americans were that back in the day. But Arthur Ashe said about his work ethic that he practiced on the day he got married. With back in the day, the Nick Baltieri did what the old Aussies would do, is that he would teach all day, but he'd have, a promising junior on the court. So if Nick, this was back when Nick was in law school and he eventually dropped out of law school, but he was teaching tennis, especially then he went full time after I dropped out of law school. So he's teaching, and he'd have Brian, as the story goes, he'd be there all day. So he's, feeding balls as someone's saying it 4 hands down the line. Godfrey's standing right next to Nick as Nick's feeding balls. I was with a young kid who's on this list for winning 12s, Victor Lilov, and he met Brian Gottfried because Brian was doing something with the USTA, and he knew that Gottfried had lost to Vilas in the final of the French. It was a year that Borg played World Team Tennis. So Brian said he was so amazed that this kid had an appreciation for tennis history. And I said he'd ask him what the score was. Then he knew what the score was. Any comments on Gottfried, his brother Larry? I had a chance to meet Larry Gottfried. He used to practice with Chrissy all the time. It's amazing how many top female players played with 16-year-old, really good 16-year-old boys. I remember watching Sharapova so many times at IMG. That's who she'd be practicing with. You want to have a practice partner that's competitive and compatible. Billy Mays with Billie Jean King, but Larry Gottfried used to practice with Chris Evert all the time. Give me another year. Let's go. Andy's turn.
I was just going to say quickly on Gottfried. I was talking to someone the other day about, they're talking about the greatest of all time. And I was mentioning John McEnroe just because, he's number one in singles and doubles. And you don't really think of the singles players these days, They don't really have high doubles rankings. And Gottfried was number 3 in singles and number 2 in doubles. It's just like, hey, that's a pretty darn good tennis player.
He played so much with Raul Ramirez. His name's on this list for winning the 18s, but he's Mexican. It used to be that you could be from any country in the world and win our 18s. It was an international tournament. It's on this list. Rod Laver won the 18s, played in Kalamazoo. It was on red clay, best of 5 sets, and Laver won it in 56. It's a mistake that we've made, making it easier for our children, not keeping it difficult. Actually, with Vic had a film of Brian Gottfried, class act, and so, as someone goes forward, the racket face will be close to vertical. As they go forward, the racket face opens up. That old question would teach people what happened or what's happening. And, Vic would get some of the players mad at him because, they would say one thing. It was, well, because by the time you feel the ball, it's 7 to 11 feet off your string. So Godfrey said, well, initially I'm driving it, but then I'm turning the racket under to keep it in the court. And, by the time he turns it under, the ball's well on its way. Anybody else? I don't know anything about Patty Ann Reese. If someone's a national champion,
I think Gottfried's college story, if you want to hit on that, it's collegiate.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's interesting.
We were talking about it today with somebody, so that'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, you want to go? I mean, before I
go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right. Well, in 1962 and 1963, Dick Stockton, he won the 12s. And back in the days, perhaps it was a little bit safer, or definitely safer. Is it just the stories where fathers just put him on the bus and said, "Hey, see ya." Just teaching people need to become independent. I mean, I think that's one thing that. How's it go? Let's ask Yvonne. Should you prepare your kid for the road or the road for the kid?
Which one's the correct one?
First of all, how do you just say that?
Yeah. So it goes, don't prepare the road for the child, prepare the child for the road.
Yeah. So Dick Stockton and Brian Godfrey, they go to Trinity. Clarence Mabry's the coach. They were D1. They were a powerhouse back then. And they practiced 4 times a day. You might have been with me. I think it was Bill McGowan, who was a teammate. So it was a rainy day. We're at a function in Dallas at what's the name of the place right by you? T-Bar M.
Yep.
For our listeners, Dave runs this big program out in Dallas, Brookhaven. So they have indoor, but there was a little bit of delay in the action because of the rain and such. But so Bill McGowan tells the story. So he just called it the adversity quotient. So one of their practices was just hitting serves on their own, serves and returns. Another practice was playing a set. But they had the team practice, but they were practicing 4 times a day. They ended up being top 10 in the world, and they played in the NCAA finals. But what they had taped to their dorm, the outside of the door, was just one set a day. Who won that day? But I really like that story. Adversity quotient. How much can you take? And you have to put in extras. I think that comes up. Screen time. Young people today want to be tennis players. They don't realize how much time they're wasting on the phone. But the 12s. Anybody else on 64? You want to move on? Let's go with Yvonne. Your turn, Yvonne.
In a year, let's go 95.
95.
Going with the 12?
Still in the 12s.
95.
This is
not held in 95.
There you go.
That's when they did away with the ranking.
Yeah, 1990 to 98. 90 to 98, that's not held.
Yeah.
The USTA did away with them, yeah.
I was thinking Yvonne made a mistake. What are your thoughts on that, turning backs? Is that they wanted the USTA, the governing body of tennis, they were pushing development, and so they didn't want to have such an emphasis on ranking, so they stopped. I didn't realize it was for 8 years. Wow. Comment on that. Let's go Davey first. What do you think, not having the national 12s? Was that a good idea or bad idea?
I don't think it changed anything in terms of what they were trying to accomplish. I mean, they did it. The whole theme of it was to eliminate pressure. It really wasn't developmental based in that sense. It was a big period. I remember, stressed and this and that, but you'd still go. I mean, there were still the 12 tournaments, and I think some of them were like, you're in the red group, you're in the blue group, and it was essentially the same thing and just reworded. It was, I think, in my opinion, useless. And, I see useless endeavors taken on now. And I think that I'm not surprised it took 8 years. I think that people have a tough time admitting when they've made mistakes, and they don't know how to get out of them, and they just kind of let them die out down the road. And so I would say that was typical of kind of the pathway that's taken politically by some of the governing bodies, and it didn't accomplish anything, in my opinion.
That's a great word, useless. I know some people that say it with a little more color. You are pure effing useless. freaking useless. Yeah, I think that, people were saying there was a red flag because if people want to really compete, they'll find another sport.
Yeah.
But I also think too, is that you can find competition. It's great for kids to have an opportunity to go here, there, and everywhere. But I do think that most families spend way too much money on pursuing rankings in the early age groups. But there is that expression to be on to be at this stage. So, you're playing for a national title. I know my son Connor, he had a chance to win a singles title, and he lost to somebody that had won a couple national titles. Now that player he lost to, so I was in the finals, and the player he lost to, use some letters here, USC and TCU. He was on both those teams, but he didn't really crack the lineup. So I think that's one thing that you want to get around to, Dave, too, is right. We go to the 18s is, where did their junior tennis game take them as far as into pro tennis? Andy, you have any thoughts on that? No rankings?
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. It's not necessary to compete and play in tournaments. You want to just work on skill development. There's other ways to find competition and deal with pressure, but they started to mandate certain things, and it's kind of like what Yvonne was saying. You're preparing the road for the kid, taking away certain things. Life is about competition. I mean, in the U.S., all the capitalism, whatever, it's a competitive world, and the sooner you can get into that and learn all the lessons that you are going to through competition, the better. I mean, if you're going to be a tennis player, a young kid, you got to learn to, at a national level, okay, think of everything that goes along with that, the travel, just all those kind of things that you got to deal with. Don't protect the kid, just get them ready for those tests and start doing it.
One thing that comes to my mind is, first of all, to elaborate, add to what you said, is that to work on skills, but was there really a substitute? Was that put in place instead of the emphasis of playing 12 nationals? I've said years ago what they should have done is the USTA's, the kids that are competitive is rent college campuses and say, okay, we're going to play today, pick a name out of the hat. And, you could even do it where it's Monday, everybody has to serve and volley. Be creative,
Yeah.
But I don't think
But to protect, it's almost like to protect these young egos or whatever it is, protect them to not feel like they're losers or something if they're, competing. I don't think that's where you want to go.
I think one thing is match count. The idea of renting college campuses and putting a bunch of kids in a dorm with a bunch of courts, and how many matches can they play, singles and doubles, and they would all be competitive. And they're going to keep track of score. I mean, they're going to know where they stand on who beats who. But one thing this reminds me of is Haz Izwan from Malaysia. Now, he and his wife have a PhD, but his government spent some fees to cover him staying with us, and they're helping him develop so he could later go back to Malaysia and help with tennis. So for his dissertation, what he did was really interesting. Is he collected all this film, and he used La Petite. So I think of Alcaraz's coach when I see him. Juan Carlos Ferrero was one of them, and what was their tactical behavior? But it was amazing to look at. They acted at 14. They acted like so much like young pros, and in some cases they had more. They controlled themselves better at 14 than they did when they were on the tour. Of course, the rules are such that I saw where TFO got fined $120,000. So the rules are such that in junior tennis that you can't get away as much as you can in the pros. But now that's interesting. When I looked at it, I was looking for 95. I tell people I have total recall. I recall totally what I want to. I forgot. I hadn't really thought about that time period. Mm-hmm. Let's go with whose turn? Andy, give us a year.
Go with my birth year, 76.
76.
Bicentennial.
You in the United States, baby.
Bicentennial. Yeah.
Oh, this is a great one. I sent him a text message like 2 weeks ago. Jimmy Arias from Buffalo, New York. Susie Mascarin from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Any comments on those two?
Yeah, Jimmy. Forehand, Bolletary.
Jimmy
He's
Ayers
running IMG now.
Yeah, his father worked for Niagara Mohawks, was a Niagara Mohawk engineer, mathematician, scientist, math guy. And how the story goes is Nick just saw him hitting on a public court, and Nick goes, "That's how you hit a forehand." Because back in the day, it was 180-degree swing, shake hands in the back, shake hands in the front, penny on edge. At least people were trying to teach a ready position, a unit turn, a backswing, a contact point, follow through. But and then actually a year after that, Braden's book came out. It was looked upon as radical to tell people to close the racket face at the bottom of the swing on the forehand side. Jimmy became really good friends with Nick Bollettieri over the years, and Jimmy didn't have a backhand grip on the backhand. I think he got to be as high as 4 in the world. Upstate New York person, Susie Mascaron. I know she's a really good tennis player. I don't remember that much about. I know where she was from, but I believe she went on and played on the tour for sure. Any comments on those?
She was
two?
like top 30, top 32 maybe.
Yeah,
I spent some time talking with Jimmy in the Indian Wells tournament. I used to see him there, and great personality. I think for me, he's one of the better. Just listening to him doing some commentary, I always liked his commentary.
Oh, he's honest. He said about Patrick Monegulu, he's in the booth. How does he end up in the booth? How does he end up in I should say the player's box. I shouldn't say Patrick Monegulu. But yeah, he said about Shapovalov, I love how the kid comes to the net, but he doesn't know what to do when he gets there.
Right.
No, definitely honest. Refreshing. Okay, back to Davey.
Let's go 2002.
2002. Oh boy, Dennis Navolo and Christy Frilling. Dennis Navolo, he beat my son up at Kalamazoo. And a few years later, my son beat him on the Pro Tour by the same score. He was so fit, baseliner. I was a director. Oh, let me correct myself. I was the host, I guess. I was Dave. You were on that, and both of you, Dave and Andy, HCC, the 28-court facility in Tampa. Mm-hmm. We had a national tournament. Now there's National 1, National 2, National 3. They didn't exist. Before it was just nationals. But I remember Dennis playing that. He played at
Illinois, right?
Played at Illinois.
Yeah.
He ended up staying at our tennis house in Tampa. We were helping him with his serve and his volleys. But that tournament, 18s, he won it. He was so fit. He could really keep the ball in play. But he didn't force enough. He didn't go forward. And I remember he's staying at our place, and he was practicing with Isner because Saddlebrook was right by where we were, based in Tampa. He goes, "I'm playing so well." I go, "Tell me about the drills." And Isner wasn't serving. They just put the ball in play underhand. And but I one time, it was interesting. I was at a challenger in Champaign. He definitely was in the finals. I don't know if he won it, but it's really interesting. If people, for example, they grow up on indoor courts, that's their best. So if they spent their childhood playing on indoor courts, generally that's where they have their best results. If they were totally on clay, there's the exception to the rule, but I just thought being at that tournament, familiarity, he did really well. But the last time I saw him, he was, he's freelancing as a tennis coach. His brother I've talked to is a really funny guy. Trying to think where he is as a college coach. I think I'm going to guess that last I knew he was an assistant. Maybe he's a head coach now, but South Carolina. But I had a player play for him in both places. I mean, going fast here. He was at Air Force, and then he was at South Carolina, but I had people play for him. Frilling, I don't know anything about Christy Frilling, but
one story about Dennis that stuck in my mind. I remember watching him quite a bit. I was doing a lot of traveling at the time to everything. And, he was so good in 12s. You know, he primarily just played 14s. I mean, he was a notch above everybody in 12s and top 4 or 5 in the country in 14s in his second year of 12s. But he did come back and play 12 hard courts. And then the next year I watched him. He was, I think, the 1 seed at Easter Bowl. And he was right on the front court there at Rancho Las Palmas, and he dropped the match. And but his level of fight, like you said about Juan Carlos Ferrero, his maturity was way beyond his years compared to the other kids in the tournament. I was there, Steve, with and Andy and Yvonne with this. Steve knows him well, Kayvon Karimi and a group of kids. And Kayvon was easily as gifted, more gifted in my opinion. But the next day or the day after, they played the first round of consolations, and it was held at a different site. And when we were walking through the parking lot, you could hear the intensity on this court. And it was, you know, backdraw first round, 1 seed, and Novello had, you know, was treating the first round of the backdraw like it was the finals of the Easter Bowl. And because he dried up a little bit, he didn't grow much at one point. And, you know, he was a stellar in the 12s, 14s, and then dried up a little in 16s, just kept pounding it, you know, made his way back in the 18s and then had a, you know, really good college career. But I have a lot of respect. He was here in Dallas for a bit. But those guys that just kind of persevere through it all the way through the good and bad times. And I think of like Kayvon, a kid that I'd worked with, and you've helped Steve. And I mean, his perseverance skills were just overshadowed by a guy like Novello, who made it way further just on heart and guts.
Kayvon's coaching, isn't he?
Yeah, he was here. I think he moved out to California. I think he's in real estate or something.
With Dennis, shout out to Mark Bay. Mark Bay was in his corner when he was coming up in Chicago. With, but here's a funny story. Jimmy Rogers was you know, a student at Tyler Junior College, Tennis Tech, all these connections from way back. His daughter became a really good golfer, and you know, good enough to have a full scholarship, Division I, and she used to come down and stay at our place, and Jimmy would show up just for the. I was flattered that they wanted me the mental toughness coach for a golfer. Same thing with Richard Hernandez, his daughter had a scholarship in golf. So Dennis is there, and we're going through the serve and the volleys. He wants to, all these years later, you know, so we're talking about the 12s, but this is after his junior career, college career. He's on the tour. Somebody tells him to come and see me, and I'm talking to him. And Rogers is so funny. He was at one time a student. He goes, Steve, I got this. And you could sit down now. So he just takes over the video analysis, and he just goes, Nivola, you have no effing clue how to even hang on to the racket. And, you know, it's just, you know, the guy's knifing volleys and whatever. But no, so, yeah, when I think of Dennis Nivola, that work ethic and whatever, he obviously hats off. I mean, to be a player of his stature, but he definitely had, like all tennis players, holes in his game. It just makes you wonder if he had more of technical input. Because no, the way you summed it up, Dave, he's such a great fighter, competitor. All right, who's next? Back to you, Yvonne.
Let's go 99. I was born that year.
Wayne Gretzky. He's Russian, you know. Wayne Gretzky's grandparents came over. 99. Alexandra Mueller. And then Matt Brunch. Bruch. How do you say that, Yvonne? Brunch. No N.
Brunch.
You guys remember that? I remember Alexandra Mueller. I believe she's a Philadelphia gal, but I could be mistaking her with someone else. Any comments on the Wayne Gretzky year?
No, they don't. I don't have their tennis cards. Like if they made cards about them, I don't have them. I vaguely remember, and the other guy, little or nothing.
I think Bruce played for Stanford.
Yeah. I'd have to look that up. I mean, it's interesting to go back. Mueller, I think it's a gal from Philadelphia, but let's go back to Davey. What do you got, Davey?
You want a year?
Yeah.
Let's go with some recent. Bring it into 2015.
2015. I'll have Yvonne take a shot at that.
Let's see here. Oh, wow. I apologize to this person. Saud Al-Hokbani.
One more time.
Saud Al-Hokbani.
Good Irish name.
And then in the women's or the girls' side, it would be Nikki Yanis.
This is the 12s. 2015. Doesn't ring a bell for me with, of course, I think as you go now, there's, now, if it was 2014, simple math, you just have 10 years or 22 now. So you could actually Google them, see if they could still be playing college tennis. I see 2016, Victor Lilov. People look at our content. He's somebody who spent a lot of years with our curriculum, our pathway. Tom Stem, some of you train and teach tennis. You remember Tom Stem, David. So there was a coach chat.
Yeah.
There was a coach chat. People could find Victor Lilov certainly in our educational content. So there's a group of coaches bad-mouthing how he's hitting the ball. And, it just got older and older, longer and longer, the list of people being critical. Yeah, this is old school. This kid will never be able to play. It's an injustice what they're doing in their tennis game. So Tom Stem joined in, and there was quite a few coaches that were chiming in. As Tom told me a story, he says, well, Tom just said, that kid you're talking about, he just won the Orange Bowl. He said, like last month, that kid won the Orange Bowl. And he said instantly everybody deleted their comments. Funny story. I
think as we hear some of these names too in the 12, that the kind of the point of Uncle Tony and the point of what we're doing with, there's really the rush that people perceive isn't really there. To fame and fortune, if that's their goal in pro tennis. And some of these names, I mean, we all follow tennis at probably a level that's unique, and some of these names are just not even recognizable, and others are obviously. But you go to the 12s and the national events, and people have a tough time discerning between that and the actual Wimbledon final, and I think that the perspective of all of that is so critical, because it really does hinder the development process.
So many stories. Start at the top and go down 62. I'll just do this randomly. Blaine Willenborg, small guy. He went on, played at UCLA, played on the tour. As the story goes, his dad bought him a VW Bug. And not on the way to school, but of course, this was way before homeschooling. On the way back, his dad said, you have to stop it here and push the car all the way in. And if I ever see you just drive the car without pushing it all the way back, I'll take the car away from you. I just heard that story. And anyway, the guy had such strong legs.
Mm-hmm.
Go down the list. There's, Jimmy Arias, we mentioned, Ricky Leach, Richie Renenberg. Al Parker won it back to back. That's another thing. Could they win it both years?
Ty Tucker won singles and doubles.
Yeah, this very next guy, 1982. But before we get to Ty, and I'm not sure, Ty was weak on one side, forehand or backhand. I mean, he'll tell you that. But I one time was with, I met this gentleman at Vic Braden's, and he was assigned to hang out with me. And VIP. He was a very important person. Of course, Vic thought everybody was a very important person, but he was writing for Sports Illustrated. So he ended up spending a lot of time in communication with me. So he actually went to work with Dennis Vandermeer. He worked with Welby Van Horn as well. So I'm at Dennis's place, Hilton Head Island, and Dennis was creative, innovative. And it was Al Parker, 1200 champion, playing the writer from Sports Illustrated, Jack Winter. And I'm wearing a headset like I am right now. And the kid had earplugs on. So Dennis was coaching Al Parker. And I was coaching Jack Winter. I remember Dennis going, Steven, you're going to lose. You're going to lose badly. And it was 6-0, 6-0. And so the writer from Sports Illustrated had a chance to play Al Parker. Here's a trivia question for Dave Anderson. Who was the last person to play Al Parker?
Scott Stewart.
Scott Stewart. And then Al came off the court. He said, I'm losing to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
For our listeners, his name came up earlier, Scott Stewart. Dad was a cross-country coach and made him run a mile a day. If the kid had 104-degree temperature, he'd run a mile. Here's the two other, right after Ty Tucker, who was doing so well at Ohio State. Jared Palmer. This is back. Michael Chang, Tommy Ho, Jeff Salzenstein. Let's go with Gerald Palmer. His father had a lot to do with trying to improve the standard of academics in academies. Michael Chang, some people think he's the fastest tennis player ever. I heard a great story about Michael Chang. He was doing some coaching for the USDA, and he was coaching Stevie Johnson, Sam Querrey, and some other top Southern California kids. And he was giving them a hard time. He goes, I'm a total baseliner, but you guys don't even think about coming to the net. With Jeff Salzenstein, what do you guys have to say about Jeff? He has a lot to say about us. I guess maybe not anymore, but he used to. He used to be one of our biggest critics.
I remember watching him. He played Mike Russell here when we held the NCAA indoor individual championships. And I mean, as a player, he was very, very solid, obviously. Lefty, bomb serves, went forward well. I've watched a lot of his information that he puts out. He captured a lot of people with his messages. I don't know what he's doing now. I think he's still coaching up there.
He's from Colorado. I mean, big serve. It certainly helped him in high altitude tennis. It's interesting. We don't know exactly where these national 12s were played. You
mentioned Chang, and I watched them play Arthur Ashe the year it opened. Salzenstein and Chang.
Yeah.
And Chang beat him. But it was a competitive match, not highly competitive. But
Tommy Ho, that was in Corpus Christi. I remember being there with Clayton Stanley. But Jeff Salzenstein, he played doubles at Wimbledon with Chad Clark. And then he was coached by Joey Johnson. I mean, he didn't. Someone had to tell him that there were some connections to what we do. But when people do, we get it all the time. Get it all the time. People look at our content and are very critical. On the other side, I think of Chanda Rubin from Lafayette, Louisiana. I can remember a girl that we coached, David, Lissa Kimmel, lost his Chanda Rubin. And I go, Lafayette, Louisiana. So, okay, there's a player coming out of a smaller city. Christina Moros, I know we're interviewing Jeff Moore coming up, and we have a question from her that was given to us by one of her teammates. So, yeah, she was NCAA champion, but team championship at Texas. But, I think you think about winning a champion in one era is a champion in another era. But it is interesting to look back at 12 and under champions. Let's go one more time through this thing. You guys have the list in front of you, right?
I don't have the 12 list, no.
Okay, no problem. But Tracy, you've got Tracy Austin. Jeannie Everett, Chrissy. maybe she had the flu. I don't think she could have lost with Andrea Yeager. Dave, did you ever spend time with her father, Roland? I know a lot of our students went down to Saddlebrook and spent time with
I didn't go to
Yeager.
Saddlebrook. I know Tylee did and a few others, but yeah, I know the stories of him, but never got to be around him one-on-one or in a group.
You get, Mary Jo Fernandez, like Stephanie Ray was a great player, but players that went on with Kathy Rinaldi,
Mary Pierce.
Yeah. I think as you look down the list, you can definitely see that tennis is much more international, but in other words, from 62, say to 1990, you see a lot of names where people made it all the way to the pro tour, but not as much. But tennis has certainly become more global. But I think with what Harry Hopman said about the Aussies in 50s and 60s, I said, why haven't we produced as many players? He said, the problem is we become too affluent. All right, let's go to the 18s. Anything else on the 12s though before we do that? The brains of the operation. You want to throw anything here, Yvonne? What do you got, Dave?
No, I think Uncle Tony, the point he made is, that's great, but let's not get too excited. You're really halfway between home plate and first base on a bunt, and long ways to go. A lot of work to do, and keep everything in perspective. And it's not going to make or break you, and define you, because of that. So.
I was going to say, Steve, maybe you can give us a little insight on Maggie Soanes, because she won in 2022. I haven't met her yet, but I've just heard about her.
Yeah, we could do that for sure. Jack Sock, he won in 2005. That guy just won and won. I think he was 80-0 in high school. But I want to come back to the comment that Dave made on baseball. Barry, here's the quiz question. Coach from Oklahoma, football coach. He said this.
Barry Switzer?
Barry Switzer. There you go, Anderson. I'm going to be nice to you for another day or someday, sometime. So Barry Switzer said that, I'm pretty sure it goes like this. That kid was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could have said that kid was born on third base and thinks he hit a home run. But no, hats off to these people. Maggie Soanes, it's interesting. Upstate New York, she was down at the UCA. They have many functions. And Andy and I and his wife, Ilya, a few others, we were helping a group of players just a few miles away. And they came out and were videotaped, and they went right to work. And she made a lot of technical changes. It's interesting. I talked to Jim Richards, I considered intellectual. I haven't talked to him in a long time. And I remember he said to me years ago that what you should do is really find out, it's a great point, really find out who can compete. And, Maggie Soanes wants to win. I mean, I call her Jimmy Connors Jr. She's got the juice. She wants to win. But what Jim Richards said is that he said, people shouldn't come to see, he works with me quite a bit. People shouldn't come to see me first. There was a gentleman in South Florida, Bill Clark, and the kids that he coached, and this is hats off to Bill Clark, is in the 10s, 12s, 14s. He had so many kids that were just great competitors. And I think most people think, well, no, you really got to get your technique down first. But hungry dog hunts best. I would say that that was one thing that worked in her favor. I talked to her. She's been here to visit many, many times. I talked to her just this week. Is that I think one point for this whole thing is that no one really remembers who won in the 12s. And you got to take your hat off to the people who did really well in the 12s. But I love the quote from The Habits of 7 Habits of Highly Successful People with begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. And Andy touched upon it earlier, is that the kids years ago, it was just, you're going to become a doubles player too. You're going to play doubles and you're going to go forward. And you're going to learn to volley. It's talking about questions. A national coach asked Maggie's mother just this past week, is your daughter GreatBase? And the mother's comment was, don't judge the unfinished product. And if someone answers a question like that, they've really listened to the content we have with, because, with players off to the side and they're doing some technical routines. She changed her game. So, of course, people who follow our content know that we document development. In fact, I was on the phone earlier before we went on air. There's a couple kids that we've coached that are, same, right around the same age as her, to have them all come up here at the same time, because I think that's important too, is trying to create that environment where I think that was the secret of Bollettieri, was success breeds success, where you get the kids competing. Speaking of Jimmy Arias, that's who I was commuting with Jimmy via text. I think it would be a great place for Maggie to go to IMG. You want continuity. Start the course, stay the course. I don't know if it fluctuates, but at one point I do think it was true that they didn't use the clay courts enough, but IMG was labeled the toughest playground in tennis. You look to your left and you look to your right, and there's someone who can beat you. And I think if she went to that type of environment, I think if any person went to that type of environment, and coming back to Jimmy Arias's honesty, say, this is it. Okay, this is the path she's on. And I really think that IMG could work with the family, work with us. And, it's all about trying to have players reach their max. And, one thing the players on this list, 12s and 18s, is hats off to their family, because to be a national champion, it's not easy. I mean, I always said, just to be a national champion in tiddlywinks is not easy. And then, I do think a lot of coaches, have you ever developed anybody who's, even played nationals, let alone won a national title? But, no, I wish that you could bottle up her desire to win. People need that. But then, the parents have the challenge of, people want to win so badly. It makes it very difficult. Surprised Andy Roddick's name's on here. I would have guessed that he won national 12s, but I never coached Andy for 1 second, but I watched him quite a bit. So did you, Dave, back in the day when we were running Seguzo Bassett. And, all you got to do is listen to Andy. I've been right there where he's yelling out, I have no effing volley. I think that's really interesting about this podcast, Nothing Major, with, who are the 4 people we found? Nothing Major.
Sock,
Query, Isner,
yes. And one more. Sock, Query, Isner.
Sock. Wiffle. I play Wiffle. Jack Sock, Stevie Johnson. John Isner.
Yeah, Stevie, that's it. Yeah, Stevie Johnson. And,
Query. But they beat each other up. It's kind of fun, They're like, who's got the worst backhand? They just openly talk about, especially Sam Query and John Isner, like who had the worst backhand volley. And the Mike Sell, I saw Mike Sell, and I had something on Instagram or Facebook. Not that I'm even on those, but we post. And it was about how Isner, great as he is, he can improve his backhand volley. And Mike Sell said, hey, I saw your video. I go, uh-oh. And he goes, no, I agree with everything on there. But coming back to the 12s is Andy, you could make a comment on how players are programmed from the get-go, and it's not just technique, it's tactics. I mean, if you don't serve and volley, you don't serve and volley. But coming back to Haz Izwan, is that most of these players, it's a pretty safe bet, but by the way they were playing when they were 12, that's the way they played the rest of their days. Why do you comment on that, Andy?
Yeah, just motor programming. I watch tournaments of young kids, and you just see them years later, and you see the same holes. Just recently, there was a girl that I saw from Germany that, when she was 13, 14 years old, now she's trying to play college tennis, and the strokes are pretty much exactly the same, the same holes that she still has. But so if you don't put the work in early on or get the information early on, you're going to stay the same. And if you're staying the same, you're going to get passed up.
Yeah. Like guys, I was around the Ohio State tennis team when my son was playing there, or Ty had me work with for just a few minutes here and there, Chase Buchanan. He certainly played a lot of doubles with Austin Krajicek, who we spent a lot of years with. And, people just knew.
Backhand.
I was more of the serve that, what could he do to be really better? My recollection.
So he had a good backhand.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Backhand, right arm straight. Yeah. Serve needed a little work.
I can tell you a story about him winning Kalamazoo. I know we're going to do that next. Is that he wins the 18s. So I'm there, and it was fun. Ty Tucker sat with me every match. And so Chase was on his way to Ohio State. So he's just finishing his junior career. And Ty drove back and forth every day, Columbus to Kalamazoo, and get up really early, drive back. And he does the same thing when he goes to New York. He goes to New York for the day. He's there on Monday. He goes back. He comes back. He's back in New York on Tuesday. But Ty, he did not stay for the trophy presentation. He goes, see ya. Another thing, it'd be interesting to see how many of these people are actually coaching as well. There's just so many things to track someone's story. Okay, let's go to the 18s. Dave, why don't you open this up? What do we need to talk about with the 18s?
Well, I think there's going to be names that jump out and names that don't. And I think what Andy said about programming, I think that some of these people maybe they didn't win the week of the hardcore 12s, but the way they were playing back in the 12s certainly was similar to how they were playing in the 18. And I think it carried over for the ones who did go out onto the tour. It's an interesting list. I just did it with the women's where, I went through the Wikipedia and got their career high ranking and then their total prize money. And it's just, kind of fascinating. I didn't get through it on the guys, but seems like things go in cycles. You always hear about people talk about, crops of people and things. And you see a little bit of a trend in that with this, where some of the people that won, there was a 3-4 year span where those people did get near the top 50 in the world after. And so, it's just really a look back, kind of fun to do a little research on why people do and do not make it. I think you used to run a program, Steve, back when, basically why am I not at sectionals? And it was something like that, or we were going to run it.
It was, I remember it was, I said that we should do it because someone in the Houston area, I think they just did it one time, and they had a T-shirt that said, "I wish I was at sectionals."
Yeah.
And because it was not that easy to say, okay, I'm gonna go play sectionals, let alone play nationals. Right. Of course, that's changed too. That the draws are bigger now, and the draws are just Americans. The draws were smaller, and they were open to foreign players. Tell us a little bit about the numbers that you researched for the women.
Well, I mean, I went back to only 2004 to today, and you're in a lot of names that, I know there'll be plenty of stories, and I think that I know you have firsthand knowledge on many of them, but you go back 20 years isn't that long. People like Jessica Kirkland, Mary Gambale, Lauren Albanese, and then you get to 07 and you get Ashley Weinhold, and I'll stop at her. You can give the listeners a little history on Ashley.
Well, she started with gymnastics. Her parents went to Tennis Tech. I remember they were over in Germany with Vic Braden. They came back. I remember being in Germany with them. And they were in Oklahoma, Ponca City, Oklahoma, for a short stint. And then they were in Tyler for some years. So I think collectively, he was a student for 2 years. And I think for another 3, he taught a class. We had pro shop management, camp and club management, sharp guy. Lisa, it wasn't too long ago, there was a prestigious job open in Austin. And it's all the connections who you know. And I called them both up and said, hey, to the mom, Lisa, I said, why don't you apply to be the tennis director? I said, y'all, because she's been working at the Austin Tennis Academy forever. I don't know if he's still there, but years and years and years. But no, Ashley was athletic, and I could go on so many things where she ended up going to the USTA, and I know the USTA gets beat up some, but she had a slight regress palm up in the bottom of her serve. And then someone told her, and of course you think about when Roddick was ruling, and so all of a sudden she was told to have an abbreviated service motion. Braden, the speed of the backswing has nothing to do with power supply. You can have an abbreviated service motion, but even like a John McEnroe way back when, he would fan the racket. It was just part of his idiosyncrasy. Then when he finally served, he had that racket in the saluted football throwing position. No, I think with Ashley, so a guy got back involved, but I think she had the skills, but she, junior tennis and pro tennis, what I would say is that she didn't force enough, and she had the skills to do that. If I were to just say one thing, she became number 1 junior. It's right here on the paper in the U.S. But so she was definitely brought up through what we would call the GreatBase Tennis teaching initially, the way she was taught by her dad. And then got out of that circle. And then I said, Guy, I think he was certainly concerned, the father-daughter relationship, to get back in as a coach. And, when you're being wined and dined by the federation, it's not just a USTA, it's any federation. But I can remember Michael Center was the coach at Texas, and I set it up where, it's all the connections. Is Center played for one of my old cronies, Scotty Perelman, and said, no, you don't need to go over there and hit with the guys. You need to go over there and when you're back home, is become a student of the game and chart matches and be managed by stats. You have the skills to go forward. And, I think what wins in junior tennis many times is just consistency. But, kill or be killed. You have to capitalize on the very first short ball. And, I think certainly sometimes more of an introverted, quiet person, they need to have somebody say, hey, this is what you need to do. But no, I think that she had, unlike a lot of people, I don't think she had the technical holes. I think a lot of players, you talk about holes in their game. I don't think that's, I remember Billie Jean King saying, what is she doing on her serve? And she, I think you could talk about Ashton Kruger's further down the list. It's the same story, is that Ashley Weinhold, there should have been a way for her to be more connected. I think that same thing happens in college tennis. So when a junior goes to the federation, there's a separation. Like, how do they get good enough to go to the federation? Who helped them get to that level? And then the same thing, who helped the player get to the level where they're being recruited by all these D1 top schools? and start the course, stay the course. Why do you just shift it over to you with Ashlyn Kruger? I mean, like now this past week, I saw where she was representing the United States because Pegula stepped down, and that's a pretty big call to go play for your country.
Yeah. I mean, I tell stories. There's parallels to a lot of these players. And, you know, I think as people jump from, you know, this initial group that going back to Ashley, there was Gail Brodsky won it after her. And I think that, you know, it's very similar to the 12s in that people are in a rush. I know it's 18s, it's 6 years later, which is a blink of an eye. And they rush out there thinking that, they have to do it now. But those first, since 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 04 to 08, those players collectively didn't win $1 million together. And their rankings all hovered between 150 and 230 in the world. And so there was something they were missing in a sense, whether it was physical size that they needed to put on, that they could have gone maybe to a university, built a little muscle and further developed some areas like that, whatever it was. In Ashley's case, maybe not the technique, but the others definitely, from my memory, could have used a little more refinement somehow. But, you know, Ashlyn, 6'1", I think she's taller than that now. She was, you know, like many people, when you use the word wined and dined, when you have that in front of you, I mean, that's every kid's dream when they're touching a racket, you know, at 8, 9 years old. Not every kid, but the ones who were really dreaming it. That's pretty enticing. And, I think that there's a plus to this, thing that we offer to kids at Kalamazoo and the girls 18s in San Diego, where we throw wild cards into the Grand Slam. And I think there's a minus. And I think that the minus, you know, is very evident as you look at some of these lists, because that's the lone main draw that many of these players have played. You know, Ashlyn is, like many of the people, got a lot of wild cards early on. And I think the best thing last year for her was she had to grind out, through a lot of tournaments, through qualies and get in that way. But, you know, the doubles I watched, when the Team USA played, Slovakia, you know, Slovakia was all over the net relative to the Americans. And it was Townsend and Ashlyn, and both Townsend and Ashlyn are very, very capable volleyers. But doubles, I don't know where it's going. George Goldoff is back here for a few weeks, and you know, it's scary to think about where it's going. And it's been interesting to talk to him, because that's a guy who has won in the country in 18s, and you know, he's out there trying to survive in pro tennis, but through doubles. And you know, I think that one of the mandates, like Andy said, of the 12, it would be just a wise investment for the USTA to put more officials on the court and mandate serving and bowling. And, you know, instead of calling foot faults, we're calling point penalty for not serving and bowling. And I don't think it's that complicated, this whole thing. I think it's quite simple. And, you know, it's hard for me to watch a player who I know never stayed, you know, back on her own serve, through age 16, and suddenly staying back on every serve. It's difficult to see, because, you know, the overall development is going to suffer down the road in singles when they've opened the court up and there's hesitation. It's not pre-wired to just get in and get the weak ball in some capacity out of the air or in the mid-court or what have you. But, yeah, it was really this girls 18s really jumped out all the way through. And some people really became quite successful playing the way they did in juniors, and they just became really good at one dimension, really good at it. And typically they had wheels and they had a mind, the ones that
made a living out of it and banked a little money down the road in pro tennis. They usually had wheels in a mind, but not in all cases.
No, just the comments off comments. Roger Federer, the best players are the best movers. So wheels, to be a Ferrari. Wine and dine. I see where Patrick Gibson is on the other list. He won in 2017. I saw Patrick play last week. Hats off. He's out there. He's still playing. And obviously he's a really, really good tennis player. He's beat Bernard Tomic. But I used to call him Appetizer because when he would go to the USTA and he was their golden boy, it's not real money. The coaches have these large, I think maybe it's a little bit tighter now than it was in the past, but I remember traveling with my son Connor when he was being coached by USTA. He's on the pro tour and, every meal is paid for. Hey, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. So it's funny money. A lot of people, when they go to a restaurant, the reason they don't have an appetizer is they just can't afford it. And, but no, I think that for fun, one bounce doubles. We tell people, just you do this 20 minutes every day in practice with a group of juniors. Okay. One bounce doubles. And they could do that to be creative, say afterwards, okay, doubles, hey, it's just for fun. And, it's going to be a mixer, a rotate, just like you would in a country club setting. But the rules were, okay, one bounce, you got to serve and go in. And okay, no poaching. You take the return and come in. And then all four players are at the net every point, and then they're going to develop some instincts. But the unfortunate problem is the people that are making the rules as far as developmental tennis, I should say, are making the rules. They don't know that, you can look at a list like this, is that why did players years ago have all court skills and they don't now? Well, the individuals become bigger than the program, and it's just too much emphasis on win, 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 instead of develop. Now, Kruger's turned into, she's a big gal. Her mobility, obviously a great tennis player, but when you can count on your 10 fingers how many net appearances they have over the course of 2 sets, it's not very good. But actually, she spent a lot of time with Michael Joyce. He's on this list. What year did he win? 1991. And way back when in California, this is perhaps before his time, the courts were all cement-based. And a lot of the public parks back in the day, they were cement. They were playing on white cement with white tennis balls. And you think, well, that's got to be pretty lousy conditions. And, really successful coaches, what they want to do is they want to find the worst courts. They want to find a place that has the worst lights, and, the worst of conditions. And when you do think about where tennis players come from, like I'm always yelling out about the Russians, the worse the balls, the better the program. Go ahead, Andy.
One thing, just looking at this list, Paul Goldstein, I saw him the other day at the sectional tournament here in Malibu. He's my age, and he won Kalamazoo 3 years in a row. He won it his second year, 16, and then he won it in 93, 94. Grinder. And then I'm just looking at the list and seeing Zachary Vida. I'm not sure if I'm saying that last name correctly. Vida won it in 2019, and then it was canceled in 2020 because of COVID, and then he won it again in 2021. So he would have been maybe the first player to win it 3 years in a row in the 18s. And then Lerner Tin has won it in the last couple of years. But Vida's been close to the top 100. Seems like an introverted kid, but hard worker and pretty solid off the ground.
Yvonne, why don't you make a couple comments on Leonard Tian? You saw him a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Southern California boy.
Yeah, I have a cool, fun story with Lerner. Growing up, Mission Viejo, local town, I guess you can call it, Rancho. Let's see, Nelly Gill Ranch Tennis Club, or Racket Club, I believe it's called, and it's like about 10-minute drive from where I grew up, and I used to go to that club. Very beautiful. and I stepped on a court. I remember, no, not for the first time, but I was like 2 years into playing tennis. Start when I was 8, so around 10 years old. And I'm in a group, and I look over, and there's this like young kid. I mean, I thought he was 3, hitting with his sister and his father's calling out his name, Lerner. I'm like, wow, that's an interesting name, Lerner. And I asked some people about him that had seen him at the club, and he says, yeah, this kid just can rally, and he's like 3 or 4. And I'm watching him. He's like, yeah, he's putting the ball back and forth, and started very young. So that's this learner, and he played at a challenger here recently in Charlottesville. Watched him play, and we went with a Japanese player that is with us currently, and we watched the whole match that he played against this, close to top 100 player. And we sat down to watch this match with, and we thought Lerner had no chance because he lost the first set like 6-2 or 6-1, easy, 20 minutes flat. And the guy he was facing had this like bomb serve. I mean, it must have been hitting the 140s at some point. I mean, the sound it made was just amazing. We stuck around, and he, after over the course of the next hour or two, I don't think it lasted 3 hours, but it was like an hour or two, almost a 2-hour match, I'd say. Lerner just came back and just steadily just started winning points more and more, and was just in it. He was in every point. He put a ball back in play. You just wait for the right opportunity, and then late in the second, he got a break, won at 6-4, I believe, or maybe it was a tiebreak in the second. I don't quite remember the score, and then ran away with it in the third. And it was very interesting because usually players that are winning and then lose is because they start to play worse. Where in this match in particular, I took note that Lerner's opponent, didn't necessarily start playing worse. Just Lerner made more balls, so his opponent had more opportunities to make mistakes. He played the same, just Lerner made him play more. Just being warmed up throughout the match and getting more balls back, getting used to the pace of his serve and such. And I mean, Lerner rips it from the baseline. His backhand's, I'd say, more shaky than his forehand, but his serve is also not up to par. I mean, if he'd be close, if he'd want to be top 100 as a solid player, he'd really have to have his serve looked at, because it barely gets to the 120s, I'd say, ever. And he has a hitch and such, but he's a absolute fighter. I mean, you watch him play and you think he's just a gladiator out there. You just stone face, goes from game to game, just never gives up. Okay, I got this. And you have this feeling about him that's like, he's going to come back, even though he's down and he's losing badly.
Will over skill, yeah. Run, hit, compete. I ask kids all the time, okay, what are you best at? And of course, people are sent to us to work on their ball striking skills. Or another one is mind, mobility, and mechanics. And, like say Matthew Forbes, he won Kalamazoo this past year, and I think I made a videotape for him. Not 100% sure, but his father's Roger, and Gabby Forbes. I spent some time working. Gabby was at your place at one time, Dave, and this guy is really athletic. And now that he was going to go to North Carolina, now with the NIL money, he's at Michigan State, and the expression "the horse is out of the barn," and that's another whole topic to be able to help somebody out. Like say, I think of like a Michael Moe. He's still, to my knowledge, even just like 6 months ago, I know he's still playing, and you just go, whoa. Some of these players, Donald Young, you can name pretty much any player. I do think like Paul Goldstein, who Andy mentioned, smaller guy, but similar to Ashley Weinold. It's like with the NCAAs. There's been several years in a row where the person who loses ends up has had a better career on the pro tour. I think one question with the 18s is, Were they playing more like a junior, or were they playing more pro style tennis? When the point's over, I'd like to tell people, when the point's over, from Jim Lair, did you play aggressive percentage tennis? Simplification is sophistication. And a lot of them that do really well in the juniors, it's mostly from being very, very consistent.
Why don't we talk on for a moment on Jack Sock, who won, 2010, 2011, and I know, we through our involvement with players, we've had many people play him. Steve Jr. or played him that last year, I think in 11 maybe. But I watched Sock a lot through juniors. And back-to-back 18s champion, and then why obviously he has some factors, but the whole thing you said about mind, mobility, mechanics, and will versus skill, and will and skill, and talk a little bit about Sock's will and confidence.
Well, Jack Sock,
why he kind of made it, yeah.
Jack Sock, older brother from Nebraska. Then he was in Kansas with Mike Wolf. Michael Wolf played for Scotty Perelman. Scotty Perelman, when Jack Sock, for the longest time, Sock was going to go to Texas. When he was a junior tournament, he wore a Texas baseball cap. And Michael Center played at Kansas, and he was obviously teammates with Wolf, and that was the connection. But then he got good enough where he turned pro. He didn't go to college. But I think also just being free, the way he played is the way he played at the end of his career, or I don't want to make any comments about pickleball, but, certainly you cheer for your students. I think of Raven Clausen playing him in the Wimbledon final, and, talking to, I have a lot of experiences. Jack Sock wouldn't know me from the Man on the Moon, but, to write a report for Scotty that was presented to his parents, because Scotty was interested in being his coach. And, my son's just a little bit older. With Sock, I think really one thing is that if someone wanted to have instant success, you'd be better off to try to play like Jack Sock than you would Roger Federer. Just pick it up, grip it and rip it, not technique involved. I think if you were to ask Jack Sock, whose bank account would you rather have, Roger Federer or yours? So now I think most people say, I'll take the Fed's bank account. I'll tell you a Jack Sock story. So my son Connor, and he went to Florida State initially, and Dwayne Holtquist, I think a lot of coaches do, this is a very good idea, is he went to Florida State the summer before the fall. So the summer before he started his freshman year. So he really hadn't been playing very much, just to get used to being on college campus, going to class. So he legitimately pulled a muscle in his stomach, where a lot of times people will lose at Kalamazoo and a lot of kids don't want to play in the backdraw. So I was with him at Kalamazoo and said, hey, instead of changing our airfare, let's just stay, watch the tournament. So that's how I ended up with sitting with Ty Tucker match by match with Chase Buchanan. So at that time, Sock was in the 16s. I didn't say one word to, it's Gonzalez Austin. It's not Austin Gonzalez, Gonzalez Austin, a really good athlete from South Florida, played at Vanderbilt. So he was, buddies with my son Connor, but Connor was warming him up. So I was telling Connor, this is what you should tell him, because we knew whose next match would be, and he played Sock. And I just told him, I said that go right at his forehand, go cross court. Just don't let him move to the left to hit his forehand. And then also, Sock, obviously the serve at that time wasn't as good as it was a few years later because it was 16s, but he was kicking the ball, tossing way back over his head, arching his back. I said, take the return early. And, it didn't take very long. So Jack Sock was screaming out, I can't believe I'm losing to Gonzalez Austin. So Colette Lewis on Zoo Tennis, she made note of this or wrote about it, because when when Gonzalez Austin won the 16s, he said, I'd like to thank my coach, Connor Smith, who help me on all these different matches. And, but no, he's definitely a very unorthodox style. To me, I have to take my hat off. I would have never, ever thought that he would have done as well as he has in doubles. Now, I've shagged balls for Jack Sock, meaning that I'm at a pro tournament and I'm with somebody who's practicing with him. And talk about not having rhythm. I never coached tennis Sangren for a minute, but I was traveling with tennis because he was playing doubles with Austin Krajicek. And I'll never forget Sangren because Jack Sock wasn't a happy camper when he was playing futures or challengers. And, he would periodically tank. And Tennis Sangren said he plays the same whether he's tanking or he's not. I mean, it's not like he's constructing points. I mean, it's just take a rip. And it's almost like he takes the tennis out of tennis. But the one thing is that I don't think that he had the foot speed as he got older, but maybe in Nebraska, he could have been a safety on the football team. And he had a big serve. But at a national tournament, he was always playing like mini tennis. It was really, really competitive. My son was a practice partner for the Davis Cup, and my son could play a little bit on grass because of the way he was taught how to hit a ball. And so, I don't know if it was a set point or a match point, but it was one of the two. And Sock just got his bag and walked off the court and never finished the set or the match. I think that as time went by, certainly he became more popular. But when he first came on the tour, I'll never forget when he won Kalamazoo. He goes in the players' lounge. He walks right up to Roger Federer. Of course, Roger Federer doesn't know who he is. He just won the American Junior Tournament. That doesn't make you international. He goes right up to the Fed and goes, "Hey, you want to play doubles?" But with you can only speculate. I would say a negative for the GreatBase curriculum is that we won't develop an unorthodox player. The way people are trained through, and it's not GreatBase. I know Matt Clure gets upset when people say, "Are you a GreatBaser?" Is that we should have called it solid fundamentals in one sense. So, like a Monica Seles where she couldn't play on a tennis court till she was 12 and she just hit against the wall. And, the way she played tennis, I mean, she got the racket face vertical to hit. She took that ball early. But no, I think that Sock, it's really interesting. If you were to present change to someone, when do you present it to them? How do you present it to them? Who's in their inner circle? Is it supported? But the way the brain works, we know now that you just go with what you got. And, but as competitive and as athletic as he was, I would say that he could have had a better career. The big if, early on, like if Scotty Perelman got the job to coach him when he turned pro, I mean, that's not a simple job. I think that take my hat off to college coaches. Much easier to dress an 8-year-old who's just starting out than you inherit someone who's 18 years old. And, that's the one thing in recruiting is very few coaches. I think they are recruiting character. But most times I think coaches are just recruiting results. They're not saying, I like the way this kid hits the ball.
No, I'm always fascinated. And Andres Barboza could fact check it, but I think Sock, he may be the last. I know Jürgen Melzer too, person to make the year-end finals in singles and doubles. I think Melzer and Sock might be the last two. And Andy had referenced, McEnroe won in the world in singles and doubles, and then I think Kafelnikov came close to that. But
Stefan Edberg. One thing about Sock with doubles is boom, boom, and more boom. And he starts the point off really well. And, I know Raven Clausen would talk about, well, I'm going to try to serve to his forehand and volley to the backhand. Because, I know at one point, Raven, you're talking too much about the ATP pension. Some of the guys who make big money, they're not really worried about the ATP pension, but there's so much tennis math, and people have such overall, really right to the very top, they have very poor volleying technique. So the RPMs at a Sock and others would get on the forehand side. You're coming in and, you got the racket face, open at a 45-degree angle on both sides, plus then the other side of the math is that, you really haven't gone to the net since you were a young kid. I like what Joel Trucker said on one of these podcasts. If you start going to the net when you're 15, it's like learning a third language. But with, he won mixed doubles with, what was the gal who had a palm up
Melanie
serve?
Udan.
Yeah, they won they won mixed doubles. She'll always be a Grand Slam champion. Small kid. She had that great run that 1 year in singles. Like you said, the Ferrari great wheels. I'll never forget Jennifer Capriati, great ball striker. She was playing Dementieva. It was like 7 in the world. The conditions were terrible. US Open. Dementieva, the serve is right on the clock. That the serve is going under 50 miles an hour. And, someone moving through an approach shot and coming to the net, how that happened for years and years was because the grass was so bad. 3 of the 4 Grand Slams used to be on grass. By the second week, sometimes players were playing on spikes. They were going forward. But I think what Yvonne said on a podcast back, Alcaraz versus Alcaraz. That's very astute. Alcaraz staying back and playing drop shots, or Alcaraz playing, okay, let's play for the sake of geometry and let's get in and let's take the net and force a guy to have a smaller target, pressure them. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What else, guys? 18s. We got some names here. Let's look over the early. Here's one: Stan Smith, 1964. But at one time, they told him he wasn't fast enough or wasn't coordinated enough to be a ball boy. I just think Mike Belkin. All these people. I can almost tell you a little story about every name on this list. You just run into people, obviously not going way back to the early years, but, like say a Bobby McKinley. The story with the McKinleys, they grew up in St. Louis. And Bill Price would go to a baseball park. That's back when people didn't make a living coaching tennis. It was a hobby. And he would pick out generally the shortstop. And so when you played baseball, they put you in right field, right?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I was shortstop, leadoff batter with the number 4 on my back.
So you played
Bobby's a good baseball player.
Yeah, so they would have picked you out, Anderson. I remember Anderson with Robbie Seguzo. Ask Seguzo, you think if you grew up in Minot, North Dakota, and you played 15 sports, versus, or if Anderson grew up in South Florida, who would have been the better player? He just smiled and goes, "Oh, I would have been a better player. I came out of North Dakota." So many things come into it, but so anyway, Bill Price, he would tell the parents, "Hey, your kid's really athletic. If you do this, if you put a ping pong table in your garage, and they hang on to the ping pong paddle this way, and they come out and they watch me teach tennis for a year, then I'll start to coach them." Chuck McKinley, he asked permission from Clarence Mabry to go play Wimbledon. I think it was 63. He won it. Of course, that was the first, no, it was actually my train of thought. No, 63. I was thinking about back in 68. So Laver had won all 4 in 62. But, and it was open up to the pros after that. So Laver won all 4 in 69. But yeah, I wonder how many of these kids towards the end could even, could play shortstop, or could, how would they look if they played a little pickup softball? And I think they're just tennis kids now, which is a big difference. They're how's it go in the book of range, or the book called Range? The generalist is better than the specialist.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, that's interesting what you did with how they do on the pro tour money wise. People tell you they played pro tennis now. The internet came out in 1989, so all you got to do is just say, "Well, you played pro tennis. Let me Google that. Let me see how you did." It's so difficult to make money. I think there's kids right now getting more money NIL even though they're doing a much better job distributing money to the futures and challenger levels, but there's people that are making more money in NIL than they're going to make as a pro. I mean, if it's all true, it's all true. I mean, if somebody's getting 6 figures per year to play college tennis, it's going to be pretty tough to do that. It's like the landscape is forever changing. Donald Young, let's make some comments on Donald. He had a chance. That would have been great. He's playing with Townsend in the mixed at the last U.S. Open. They lost in the finals, right?
Yeah, lost in the final. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Donald Young was just here, and Jack Sock playing last week. I got to watch both of them, get ready in the locker room. But then I came out we were relegated to our climate courts because the rest of our facility was blocked out for the pickleball world championships. And Donald Young came by and grabbed a demo out of the pro shop and started hitting balls on the climate courts. And a few kids in the program was going on. It was on break, and a couple of kids said that they thought he was a kid in the program that was coming to try it out or something. They didn't know.
Oh, he does have that baby face. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, no, that's Donald Young. He was just in the finals. And but it was interesting to see Sock, Young, and Bouchard. Those people navigate the pickleball. It was kind of hard for me to see. I didn't watch one point in person, I'm proud to say. And but he was talented. He was in that crop that I was doing a lot of traveling. I remember his mother being such a strong driving force at the tournaments with him. And again, Mark Bay had a bit of background with him, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He was in Chicago before he was in Atlanta. Bay's a Chicago guy. I remember one time facility worked at, Donald played it several times, but we had a pro tournament, and there was a boy who was there who was related to someone else there. And this young kid had special needs, and he really, he was a Donald Young fan, and he just went everywhere Donald Young went. Donald Young was so nice to. I think a lot of people would have been irritated, but he was just so patient, so nice with him. But, I see Robert Yim's name here. I one time was out in California at Jimmy Johnson's academy, and Robert was assigned to spend a week with me. And he actually was a sparring partner for Mackenzie McDonald. He lived with Mackenzie's family for 2 years. There's just so many connections and so many backstories. Mm-hmm. But I remember reprimanding Raven Klaassen. I said, "You lost to Robert Yim?" Because he was a guy who just had a big forehand. And, it's amazing. Obviously he's on this list. So to win Kalamazoo, that's huge. But yet it's kind of like, well, yeah, he's fast. He's competitive. He's played a lot of tennis. But it's like, well, and I don't think it's really fair to say, well, he's a one-shot wonder. But it's amazing how many people will, they have one weapon in junior tennis. But in pro tennis, you better have more than one. So I think the same way to beat a young Jack Sock as Robert Yim was very much forehand. I think as a parent, my son playing college tennis, he certainly heard that for 4 years. And, rip it, be aggressive, go. And, but I think with these players on these lists that are obviously champions, as I said before, take your hat off to them, is that creative sets for our listeners. How do you play creative sets? And you just set the rules, and it's like, okay, we're going to play basketball, but I'm sure there's coaches that are doing that, but we're playing today, but there's no shots. We're going to scrimmage, but there's no three shot shots being taken. I mean, that's not rocket science. Okay, you take that away from the practice for the afternoon. That's going to make it work down low and do things a little bit differently. But I do think a lot of times people just roll out the balls and say, like, let's who wins. But I do think that situational training, game-based training, to me, for really young kids, I think it's let's make it fun. Let's make the kids come back. And as I've said many times on these podcasts, it should be game-based with form-based. And in the end, you call it principle-based. But I think just to challenge coaches is if these players were told, you read about McEnroe. I mean, he was a baseliner, but he just knew pro tennis. He goes, okay, I got to go forward. People think, well, Borg, he never came in. All I got to do is go back and watch Wimbledon highlights. But the sooner the better that people, again, begin with the end in mind. You want to be a pro player, okay? There's really, in the end, if you want to be a pro player, go for it. There's only one type of point, ATP point, WTA point, and don't be losing any sleep over the UTR points.
If I'm just thinking, all this list and going through all these players, it's fun, but you'd really have to go a little more in detail from a young age and just look at how they were developed and then how they have gone on to have success or limited success on the pro tour, or why maybe some of the current players aren't doing as well as maybe they could. I'm thinking of Ashlyn Kruger, that tape of Dave's where he's teaching her how to hit a backhand off of a cone. I show that all the time because Ashlyn, she has a very solid backhand. And you watch that tape, it's like, okay, here's this girl. I don't know, Dave, you could probably tell me how old she was at the time, maybe 9 or 10.
I think 8. Yeah. 8 or 9.
And just going through it, off the cone, and just the shape of the swing looks really the same today. And she had this solid fundamentals. You would think more people would be interested in that. But just looking at all these different people, there's some here that I've played against. One that I beat, Andrew Park. He played up in the 18s. He went on to have a pretty good junior career, it looks like. But Kevin Kim, played against him a couple times. But you can just go through and see why they were a good junior, like you're talking about. But then what are the little holes in their game on why they haven't, been great legendary players? I mean, Jack Sock, he has that id thing where he's got inner belief, and he was top 10 in singles and number 2 in doubles. That's not a bad career, but now he's on a podcast called, No Slams or whatever it is. Yeah. I'm sure he would have loved to win a grand slam in singles. So as coaches, can we go back and go, okay, how can we learn from this and go, how could they have been better and why are they as good as they were? What are the positives and what are the things they could do better? To try to create the maximum in each player. I think that's the goal is, okay, how do how can we improve on things? But in the end, it's physics. Last thing I'll say is that Bjorn Frantangelo is not on this list. He did crack the top 100 and he won the French Open over Dominic Thiem. And I was at a coaching clinic in Poland actually a couple of years ago, and Dominic Thiem's dad was there. And I asked him, I said, he lost to Bjorn. Why do you think that Dominic went on to have, the great career that he had? And Bjorn, struggled a little bit, just, kind of between 100 and 200 or so. And he just came down and said, some technical things, on the forehand side. Because during that coaching clinic, they were kind of making fun of coaches that were too technical, and yet it came down to ball striking in the end is what Dominic Thiem's dad had said. So in the end, it is there's all these different intangibles, the competitiveness, physicality with the sock and different players, but in the end you really do have to have great ball striking skills and to be able to have options like the greats have, not just one or two good shots.
Yeah, some comments off the comments. I think what Billie Jean King said is that the coordinates don't know what the subordinates are doing. But we, the subordinates, say, if you're on the outside like we are, we have a pretty good idea. So, Andy, you and I do for sure. I know, Dave, you've been there, but Andy, I'm going to guess that you spent 100 days anyway at the USTA National Training Center, and I know you've done that with other countries. But with Paul Roeder, was a gopher for getting aerial when he was getting his, he's a biomechanist. He's now retired. His father, he's a classy guy. I mean, I don't really know him that well, but I've met him. And way back when, there's a story where, okay, Rob Krychek made it happen. And we met with Paul Roeder on player development. And, Paul wanted me to speak to the national coaches. I said, no. I said, how to work with younger players, how to work with beginning coaches, how to work with families starting players out. Because it's a whole different animal and a lot of ego in the room, and you have all these former players coaching. So, and hats off to Sam Querrey. I mean, I'm going to guess that he was averaging $20,000 a week at one time. So obviously a great player. But I can remember telling Paul Rodert that you don't want the players in the future to have the problems that Sam Querrey has on the volley. So all these years later now, and he's a funny guy, listening to him on his podcast, is that he's letting the world know, I mean, that he wasn't too confident with his volley. There was a leader with USTA who's on the courts, and he's in charge of maybe still is in 10 and under tennis, and Matt Clore, who spent so many years with us, he's teaching his daughter Cammie, who spent so many hours with us. She spent some time with us this past summer, and she hits the ball well. It's not like she's connected and played a lot of tournaments, but she just has overall very good ball striking skills. So this coach was, talking to Matt, and because while I hear a lot of negative things about the GreatBase, and he goes, well, you like the way my daughter hits the ball? The guy goes, yeah, she hits the ball well. And then he goes, well, and Ashton Kruger was like 4 courts down. And then he said, well, watch how Ashton hits the ball. And, the one thing is you have to be able to see it. Say, for example, we do the thing with the FedEx logo. If you don't see the arrow in the middle, you don't see the arrow in the middle. But once you see the arrow in the middle, we've done this. I know you've done this with me, Andy and Dave. We're training coaches, and we have a photocopy of the FedEx logo and say, okay, take your pen and fill in the arrow. And, of course, the arrow is the arrow. Now, can you point to a flaw? I mean, it's amazing. Kids can play years and years, and they don't know they have a palm-up serve. They don't know that they have, but the way the brain works, a lot of people on this list, no one's going to hit the ball perfectly, but, the sooner the better. And obviously for the parents listening, the sooner the better that you get a really good technical start. Some sports, this comes out all the time in these podcasts. I mean, just the way someone comes out of the starting blocks or how they stand at the foul line. There's just certain things, whether it's a recreational skier or a competitive skier, they're going to put the skis on where, they're facing in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do this just for a couple and we can sign off, but go ahead, Andy.
No, it's good. Just to be efficient, just to be efficient and the foundation that you can build off of.
I think also too is that so many of these players who really did, hats off to their parents, but who really did coach these players. I see Ricky Brown here. I know, Dave, I was at this tournament, or I was at it, not the Kalamazoo, but I was at indoors with you. And his father found out that I had worked for Welby Van Horn. He said, can you give my son a lesson? So I asked the people at the club, hey, can I have permission to give this kid a lesson? I'm not charging, but his dad wants me to look at his serve. But yeah, let's go a year. Let's go around one time each, and maybe we can call it. But you're so right, Andy and Dave. You can go really deep on all of these, the backstories. Let's go with the young guy, Yvonne, 25 years old, quarter of a century. He's been walking around planet Earth. What do you got? Give me a year.
Any year?
No, I wouldn't go back to 1916.
Okay.
Harold Throckmorton. Harold A. Throckmorton. Don't know much about the guy.
My uncle.
What kind of socks did he wear? Go ahead, Yvonne.
Let me go 2001.
2001 for the boys. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Alex Bogomolov. How do you say that?
Russian. Bogomolov. Alex Bogomolov, yeah.
Let's have Yvonne. Why don't Yvonne, you give it a shot?
Bogomolov.
Okay. Then Amber Lou. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. I know Alex. That's one thing with Alex. I know I made quite a few videos for players that he was coaching. I have that experience with, because a lot of people end up seeing me for like a second opinion. I go, well, it's not about opinion. But any comments on those two? Amber Lou, she was a Stanford player, right?
I believe she did. Yeah. Bogomolov was a fighter.
Yeah.
He was a fighter. I have a story I can't tell online about him, but he was scrappy. And I think that, when I just listening to Steve, your comments and Andy's, and Andy was talking about no holes and minimizing your holes, right? Trying to plug your holes, and then Steve, you referenced something so important. If they want to go beyond two, where you got to have weaponry too, and I think that those two things often contradict with people, and or they conflict in their minds a little bit when they're young, 12, 13, 14, and I think that people go, they start going for weapons, and maybe they don't even really know what they're chasing, kind of like a dog chasing their tail. And they forget about the holes, and then they found their weapons aren't even really weapons. And I remember talking to Connor, Steve, your son, and he said I can't remember. I think it was the last time that you guys were both at that condo that Jenna and I had, and he said he just feels like there's so many incomplete players, but they're just dropping bombs. They're dropping a bomb on the serve, and then they're just basically unloading to the back fence. And I talked to George this week, and he said the same thing, in that he feels like if he could get into the higher level beyond the challengers, where the doubles is a little more conventional, not a lot, but a little, because so much of it is just unloading on the first ball, even on the returning end.
Yeah, I think one thing with that is that I think there could be a rule change where they could put tennis back in tennis, because just like in baseball, I don't know baseball, but the pros still use wooden bats, and all the way up, kids are using graphite bats. I think they should really change the rackets. One thing right under Bogomolov's name is I think this guy does a great job on TV, Prakash Armitage. Yeah, he's just big time people skills. He's just great in his role. But this is a shout out to being able to play an attacking return. We'll call it tabletop, linear pattern. You're in movement, like a volley with an added follow through. And 2002, I think I'm going to guess that Ryler DeHart, very good player, became one in the 18s, won the NCAAs, 174 in the world, and spent tons of time with us. But he would just go to crank the forehand. And I was, it was a rainy day. I said, okay, let's watch this again, Ryler. Here's the guy who won Kalamazoo. Maybe he even beat Ryler at Kalamazoo. But I said, watch this guy play the approach shot. And I do think that people go for speed and they don't think about space. They don't think about taking space away for someone. It's really, again, it's not just serve and volley, approach volleys, approach shots, the one hand, underspin backhand. As you go down the list, tennis really has changed. And then people accuse us of being old school, but it's like, come on. I mean, Roger Federer, it wasn't that long ago. The guy was pretty good. He didn't really play doubles, but he showed up. And with Wawrinka, same thing. They won the Olympics, the gold. Here's 2012, Denis Novikov. He obviously wins the 18s, played at UCLA. My son played a lot of doubles with him, and I've listened to matches where you couldn't watch the match, but you could listen to the match. So tennis radio. And in all fairness to him, when you just listen to a match, and Novikov misses a backhand volley, and Novikov misses a backhand volley over and over again. It's just amazing that people, they do make the same mistakes over and over again. Okay, let's go with No Socks. What was the name of the wolf in the movie Dancing with Wolves? Trivia question.
Yeah, wasn't it
White Sox?
Dancing with Wolves.
It was white, Two Socks, right?
Two Socks. There you go. So let's go to Anderson, No Socks. What do you got?
Well, I'm going to not throw a year, but just a name out, because I know he has some connections out with, and you guys might have some background on him. Michael McClune, who I thought, might have a impact a little bit, but 2007 winner in the guys.
Yeah, McClune, he definitely had what I would say a complete game. I don't really I like the word, classical, old school, but
I think of like David DeLucia when I think of McClune.
Yeah.
They were both capable of playing all over the court and, didn't have glaring holes that I remember, either of them.
Another Philadelphia kid, like Lisa Raymond. I see her name on this list. Julian Krinsky knew him when he was a kid and had some influence on his tennis. But he put Notre Dame on the map tennis-wise because before he went there, they were really not known for tennis. Give us a year, Davey or Andy. Somebody give us a year. We'll randomly go here.
Go ahead, Andy.
You go name too.
Let's say 2010.
Jack Sock and Shelby Rogers. Let's go with Shelby Rogers. I know she played World Team Tennis with Raven Klaassen. Raven was the player of the year. But overall, she has a very good game. I think she spent a lot of time at Vandermeer's. I think she actually is a South Carolina kid who spent a lot of time at Vandermeer's. But she has a complete game. She's solid.
Strong. She's been injured a little bit. But...
Yeah, you've probably seen her when you're on the tour. And of course, we've said quite a bit about Jack Sock with the.
One thing with Rogers, looking at this list that the prize money part of it, I went through to Gail Brodsky, and then you get McHale, Rogers, and Davis 3 consecutive years. So it went from 5 players that barely made $1 million, and all of a sudden there's 3 in a row that exceeded $5 million in their career.
Who's that? McHale, Rogers, and Davis?
Yeah, and it is funny with Crops how. You look at brothers that make it or family members that make it, Sanchez's or anybody. I mean, you could go on with so many names, but the internal belief sometimes is just difficult to put a finger on. But, it is interesting because you look at McHale, Rogers, and Davis. I mean, they're radically different players. Each with their own strengths. McHale with her, speed and her mind, and Davis feisty and 5'2" basically, and Rogers more all court. But out of the blue, from nobody making it, 18's winners, then there's 3 back-to-back that made a career out of it.
Lauren Davis hasn't gone away. She's from Cleveland. I never worked with her, but Mark Leisman, who played tennis at Northwestern, I just remember the serve. He was telling the mother that she needed to come see me work on the serve. I know Joey Johnson, who's been in our corner for a long, long time. He's done some work with Christina McHale. Vicky Duval. I worked with her brother, and I met her when she was like 7 years old. I mean, by the time she was 10, she was already with the USTA. I didn't have anything to do with her, but I could just tell this kid has charisma, the confidence, just a smile on her face. And we tell you all sorts of stories about Vicky. But she told her mother, Cedric, she, wanted to just come and see me because the brother had very, very good technique. So they come and meet with me, Nadine, the mom, and says, "Want to make the U.S. Open?" I want to play the U.S. Open. I said, certainly you can get a wild card to San Diego. And that's what we're talking about. Who won San Diego? She won San Diego. And I said, what I would do is I'd take the next, I think it was 5 months. I said, I'd take the next 5 months. I wouldn't play a tournament. I'd just hang out here. And we have it all documented on film. And it was amazing. One of our students who left tennis teaching, went on to be very successful in business, sight unseen. Brandon Flanagan was going to be her coach. And the sponsor basically said, use my name and the last person, he said, if Smith tells you to eat Cheerios, you can't have cornflakes. I mean, no strings attached, was going to give $80,000 to the coach, $80,000 for expenses. And there was many, many factors, but, she went back, and was with IMG. And, but so she had, then she came back and spent time, and we have it all on film. I think of, like a Robin Anderson who became, won the USTA, won the NCAAs. We have it on film that those two girls drop hitting balls and hitting off a cone and pre and post. But especially if you're changing your game. If you're changing your game, you're going to be a slow starter initially. If you, like, say you asked about Maggie Sohn, hey, this is what you did when you were, if she was banging balls when she was 6, this is what you did when you were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So, you're just turning 11 and now you're introduced to this. You have to work on it every day. Trace is the old, you're going to revert back. But it's true, regardless of a person's background, you have to always be working on the technical side. But, Vicky, what's the girl's name, who married, I don't know if they're married yet, Bjorn Frantangelo. So Madison Keys, Jeannie Bouchard, because she had the it thing. Vicky Duval had the it thing. I can remember telling her the same thing I told Mike Costa. I said, hey, you got such a personality. You should really study this content, really get a handle on the game. And she did get a shot at it. I said, because you could, when you're done playing, you could be a commentator. But, because really, for the most part, people on TV they don't know tennis math like they should, the people with the microphones. So anyway, with Vicky, she had Hodgkin's, and, I was at the Open, talked to their mom, and they had her with a coach who had, been a cancer survivor, but she should have just stayed with it, but I can remember, Andy, you and I worked with that young guy, the Indian kid, Ram Ramanathan.
Yeah, Ram.
So he was going to come and go to work on his game, but all of a sudden he makes the Davis Cup team, and boom, he didn't come and work on his game. And so I remember Vicky, IMG, people should know how that works, is that, so she, why didn't it work out? So, she's invited to go be part of a Billie Jean King, Elton John function. It's like, you don't need to go to that. This is what you need to do. And, even then with Flanagan, I remember he wanted to have 2 weeks to resign from the position that he was in. He was working at the Delray Beach Tennis Center. And, but what happened was she got lots of wild cards. And wild cards can be bad news. Wild cards can be fluff. And, there's a famous story about the late Mark McCormick, who started IMG. He was his first agent was Arnold Palmer. And he told Borg, I'll get you a wild card. Like, now, if you win the Masters golf tournament, you're in that tournament for life. You can play it till you die. And most people say, hey, okay, I'm not going to play anymore. I'm 62 years old or whatever. So the British, and how slow they have been to make changes, just as part of their culture. So Mark McCormick was pretty audacious to say, well, I'll tell the Brits, they're just going to let you in. And so Borg, actually, after being away for 1 year, he wanted to come back in, but he was, when someone can keep the ball and play like he could, he was very stubborn, and he wanted it. He didn't want to play qualies. So yeah, it's interesting to talk about these players from the past. With another thing too, Andy, talk a little bit about Vicky. Her name's right after that. She's still at it. So Yvonne, why don't you do the math? So if she's 18 in 2013, we're going to just add 11 years to that, right?
That's correct. Yes.
See, why don't you add those numbers? See what you come up with.
11 years, 29.
29. See, he went to school out in California. Smart guy. So go ahead, Andy.
No, I spent a week with her right after she probably won She was 18 at the time, I believe. I think maybe she got a wild card or something to the Acura Classic in San Diego. And a friend of mine connected us for me to really take a look at her, because I think he wanted to maybe represent her and wanted me to do a study of her game. But I spent a week with her and filmed all of her strokes and made voiceover videos, technical videos on all of her strokes and recommendations. And, don't really remember spending a whole lot of time, trying to make any changes, but I did go through them with her and had a good week. But she's gone on, to do okay. She's been in the top 100, and she's made a lot of the changes that, I recommended. Again, I don't know if it worked off the tapes I made or not, but she's really shortened her swings up, and she had a big high toss before, and her elbow was really low, like touching her hip, and she's made some changes to her strokes, and she's still hanging in there. I think she's, in the top 200 right now, but she gets some good results here and there.
The next player, Catherine Bellis. Did you go by a nickname?
Cece.
What is it? Stacey Bellis? So CC Bellis. There you go. So I think this is a good one to end on, so we can motivate, inspire Dave Anderson. I know Yvonne's only 25 years young, but Andy Fitzell and myself, Steve Smith, we are high performance coaches.
Right.
And David's not. So we've got that out. We got to really, Dave, you need to go to that course. So anyway,
it doesn't matter. I'm going to still put it on my business card.
I'm 20 years. 2004. I went through that.
So I went to
high performance.
I went to that course, and I sat on the bleachers for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And there was two coaches with CC Bellis, and they were showing us what they were working on. Now, I know she's retired now and such. But what I would just say is that kid's got charisma. That kid's a winner. And I know that she's, pretty slight of built, but, that big word, if, it's like, boy, fellas, I mean, so if, biggest word in the dictionary, if she had really been taught, the two coaches that were out there working with her, obviously they inherited her. She already was a U.S. national junior champion. And, but it's like, there's so much that goes into what makes these kids winners. But yeah, so it's interesting. It was one of those things, I hate to say it, but it's almost like the more they talk, it's like sometimes a TV commentator, the more they talked, the less they knew. And it was like, come on, guys. I mean, this girl, what, but to me, it's like hats off to a player like CC Bellis, and again, the two coaches, it's like, well, where do you begin? If someone's got some holes in their game, are they going to open themselves to learning? There's that expression, on the counter side, sometimes the open mind needs to be closed for repairs, because the kiddo says, oh, I'll change, coach. Yeah, I'll change. And they just go from one coach to the next, and you can't bop and shop. And, but yeah, no, it's really interesting. With going over here on the men's side to go to Cliff Ritchie is from San Angelo, Texas, and then his sister, Nancy Ritchie. I think Murat Safin and his sister both got to be one in the world. So I think brother-sister combo, you'd have to give them the nod. But Cliff and Nancy Ritchie are way up there. But if people could see the compete level of a Cliff Ritchie, he was just an amazing competitor. But all these kids to a certain level are competitive. But I think, Dave, you touched upon it, is that it's very good. And I think that's the secret of some of the Bollettieri years, is put winners around winners. Put winners around winners.
Well, and, going back, you mentioned Safin and how he talked about how sometimes the worst thing that happened was when he won that slam, and he maybe wasn't ready for it. And you look at Bellis, and I remember the year she won the 18s and the U.S. Open. She beat little Eastern European girl who was top 15 in the world, 20 in the world, and Bellis made quite a splash on the scene. And sometimes that's what I was saying. Whether it's a wild card once you're already there, or whether it's these wild cards we hand out, you wonder if it doesn't give people a false sense of hope about where they maybe are when they're playing with house money coming in, compared to when they're out there day in and day out 40 weeks a year and having to put it, just together week after week after week. And because Bellis that year she got the wild card, did have a top 20 win right out of the gates up there at the Open, kind of like Eva Jovic did this year, and winning her first round. But Bellis also played the Junior U.S. Open the following week and lost second or third round. I think to me, it's just this kind of mad rush that I see at every stage of the game, and these people who can really process it differently. And they talk about Sinner and how his camp is doing that, thinking long term. Whether that comes into fruition, we'll see. But it's a long journey. I mean, the quest to be your personal best is never ending. And I think that somewhere along the line we lose sight of it.
One thing I have to throw in when I hear the name Safin, they ask Safin, he's in Russian politics, and they said, "What are you doing in politics?" And he said, "That's where the money is." What was the name of the guy? Willie Sutton. He robbed banks. I guess he got caught like 9 times, and they said, "Why do you rob banks?" He said, "That's where the money is." I think one thing also too is it hasn't come up tonight, perhaps, is injuries. The technical side has a lot to do with injuries, and certainly, so many of these top players have had bad luck with injuries. Even
the CC Bellis that you were just talking about, she's still young. She's only 25 right now. And a few years ago, when I was up at the USTA campus, David Ramos was there, and she was practicing, and David was filming her with a nice camera, and then they were watching the playback in slow motion, and I was there watching, and she was hitting underspin backhands, slice backhands, and she basically had an Eastern grip, so she was really having to push her wrist out forward, and they're watching this in slow motion, and no one commented on it, and I was very close to commenting on it, but it wasn't my place. But just looking at something like that, and I was just thinking, wow, and she's had these wrist injuries and elbow, and so there's an example where, okay, here's a grip that you either have to adjust your wrist or you have to adjust your grip. And if you're doing something like that over and over and over again inefficiently, I'm not saying it caused her wrist injuries, but it could have been part of the problem on the backhand side.
Yeah.
That, where she has the grip too far over, and it's like, okay, it's too bad. She's so young.
With these comments, one thing with just names like Eric Van Dellen, here's a golden nugget, is Eric Van Dellen did so well with Davis Cup back in the day, Stan Smith, Bob Lutz, that age group. And he worked on his master's one semester and then played. Now people can work on the college tennis is over in 4 years. And, obviously there's that problem with the war of financial attrition, but, people can continue their education and keep playing. Dennis Vandermeer, Jeff Borowiak, the great piano player, Dennis used to say, you got to get to a certain point by a certain age where you're not idolizing anybody. It's you. Mm. And, he used to say that about Borowiak. Butch Buchholz, we talked about Bobby McKinley coming out of Bill Price. Bobby McKinley's, or I should say Butch Buchholz, he's one of those St. Louis guys that was a hot pocket where, Bill Price taught people this is what you need to do. You need to go slow. And, back in those days, you played multiple sports, but you need to learn how to serve. You need to learn how to hit a forehand, a backhand. So I just think of the just pulling in, different thoughts. You could learn so much from the history of these players. It's like a Lindsay Davenport. Her name is on this list for winning the 18s. And two of her contemporaries would be Venus Williams and Martina Hingis. So all three became, number one in the world. And all three basically went up the mountain a different way. Venus and Serena as well. But Venus, after she was 10, she never played a junior tournament. And Martina, she won junior Wimbledon. She was 12. So again, I think for parents or coaches listening, for goal-oriented players, there's a lot of different pathways up the mountain. And I think that's one thing with these podcasts. We tease and say, hey, we'd like to find out what you had for what was your favorite baby food. But I think to really understand a story, you have to go back to the beginning of the story. But let's go with a closing comment from each person. Let's go with Yvonne. What do you have as a closing comment? You want to go last because you're best? Does that make sense?
Well, I got some notes.
Got some notes
that I can share here.
All right, let's just do that.
Okay. I brought the baseline with me. My mother said I'm the greatest player of all time. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Just don't give him a big piece. The greatest motivator in the world is the bench. Don't scam yourself. Your mistakes create the rules. Let's have a nice dinner, but there is nothing to celebrate after winning 12 nationals. Begin with the end in mind. Don't judge the unfinished product. Wheels and a mind. The worse the balls, the better the program. Will over skill. Game-based with form-based equals principle-based.
I think that's very good. I think one thing, let me ask Andy this, and Yvonne, I like transparency. I know we don't want to hurt your feelings, David, but the fact that Dave is not high performance with the USTA, should we wait till he does that so we head back on the podcast again?
Ooh, don't hold your breath. It's been nice. It's been nice doing podcasts with you. We'll catch you guys on the other side.
Oh man.
I'm not saying I'm not gonna, and I'm not saying I'm gonna. I'm just not it's not on my to-do list on my book in front of me.
Well,
I mean, if I get time, I'll do it.
I don't want to offend anyone, but I think it'd be more important to wear socks and for you than for you to go.
I wish I could. These dang varicosities. That is not by my choice. But I'm gonna even get the shorter socks now. They have the kind you can't see now.
Oh, the no show?
Yeah, the no show. That's what they're called. I saw those the other day. Those look pretty appealing.
Yeah.
So last thing I have is Fitzell, you're going to come visit. Look forward to that.
Yeah. No, we're looking forward to it. Even though it's going to be cold, it'll be a good change up from the Malibu weather here.
I think one thing, Yvonne and I were planning on traveling. The jury's still out with what will happen now that the tennis director is moved on here at Wintergreen. I certainly need to reach out to people and get some people to come and help me here just for the next 4 or 5 weeks. But I know when to come to Dallas. I mean, it's beautiful now, but you're going to have a few cold months. Yeah.
It's going to be in the 30s next week.
We talked about, it's a beautiful place up here. We talked about doing a little bit of a traveling academy and then having our players who need more competition to meet us at certain places. But in the end, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, listeners. What we're trying to do through these marathon efforts here, let's see. We'll be done in under 3 hours here. But we're just trying to reach out and help people learn more about the great game of tennis. All right.
I think one thing too, Steve, just quickly is, that line, if you really want to know your subject matter, you got to know the history. And I think it's good to just look back and reminisce and try to learn from the players of the past. And yeah.
We got to dig out some film of Dave Anderson from 1985. Flawless.
I was just thinking I should come up there when you're there. When are you going, Andy? I've never been to Wintergreen.
Over Thanksgiving break. So Yeah, I would love to see that old tape with you with hair and socks. That'd be great.
I don't know if I had socks or not.
No, I've seen those. I've seen those old tapes.
I don't know.
I've seen those old tapes. You had the blonde mullet, didn't you?
Yeah, the blonde mullet was a given. I came from hockey.
Oh,
yeah, they have a mullet up there.
Oh, I had a mullet as well.
Yeah, you talked about the history. I wanted to clear it. So, Steve, could you clarify that Borg wanted to come back after he had left the game of tennis and wanted to come back to Wimbledon the year after?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Mark Hamlin and I, we were actually in Stockholm. Mark was in northern Germany, and it was just amazing. The Swedes are doing so well, and I want to go to Sweden and just check out junior tennis. So Hamlin and I went up, and I was told that booze is so expensive, liquor is so expensive. So I take 2 boxes of, you go and you buy like 12 bottles in one box and another bottle of 12. And this gentleman was so nice to us. He said, come out to the car. And I said, I got a gift for you. So I've done this in different countries, but it's like, okay, you just gave him 2 bottles of booze. And he said, why don't you guys come back tonight? And it was during Wimbledon. It was the first Wimbledon that Borg had not played. And so we were at a practice session. It was Berglund, Borg, and this gentleman, and then Mark Hamlin and I. But no, Mark McCormick had told Borg, I'll get you in Wimbledon. And, the British people looked at him, the Wimbledon officials, like, what are you talking about? But he initially, he wanted to come back after that 1 year, but he didn't want to qualify. He didn't want to go back. And so that was the point I was trying to make.
I didn't know that. That's good. That's a good tidbit.
Yeah, I learned that in the high performance course. Didn't you learn in the high performance course, Andy?
Yeah, it actually made me wonder what would have happened if he had come back, if he had been allowed to.
Yeah,
would that have changed the course of things a little bit? But I'll cover that in my high performance podcast I have going. Part 2.
I do think that it's true that. Brain type comes into it. I know that you've always been hitting balls and ESTP, and it's like, okay, let's have some fun. Let's just go play. Like I'm a J. It's like, well, I need to practice 4 hours a day for a month, and then I'll play. But Borg, I think it's true. Once you stop playing, you stop playing. I remember meeting a gentleman. I think Yvonne works around the clock, and I told him this. If you could just play a set a day, just go play a set. Doesn't matter who you play the set with, because once you stop playing, you stop playing. And to stay sharp, I think that's very, very important. Then Borg, he was away from it for a long period of time. Then he tried to make a comeback. But
if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah. So Davey, come on up to Wintergreen. We've talked about having a reunion up here. In some ways, it's a beautiful place up here. I think it's really good for retreats for players to come, and there's so many things that could happen. But we need to have a reunion, get all the old coaches back together, all our alumni, associates. Anyway, we're over the 3-hour mark now. We do have some people out there that have listened to every podcast.
God bless them.
Yeah. How many do you listen to, Anderson? 2 or 3?
Well, he's been in more than 2 or 3.
He's been in more than 2 or 3, but he not necessarily that he was listening though.
That's true.
What's a podcast?
Really, I'm an it.
I only listen to. I've listened to numerous, but I that's my goal to make time. Trying to figure out how to make time.
Oh, I know it's
make more time.
No, but we had someone, I can't remember, maybe halfway through, because we've been doing these for a long time, is that they now have listened to all of them, but they went back and it depends on what someone does. If you have a lot of free time, but if you don't have a lot of free time, if you always have people that you need to talk to, they're right in front of you. But yeah, someone started to say, well, I'm going to stay current, but then I'm going to go back and chip away at them. But now, it's lots and lots of. In fact, Andy, we need to do that. There's some that we should maybe take down because I think I talked to Nick White, great guy, and he's moved on to some other things, but he had the opportunity to be at Skidmore. Now they have new indoor, new outdoor, and what a great opportunity for a young guy. But live and let live, and he's all the best to him. I talked to him again a few days ago. He's on to some other things, but yet there was a podcast on what his plans were at Skidmore. I don't know if maybe that's a reason to take one down, but
nah,
just leave it up there. You're the coach. You're the founder.
Yeah, there's always
a pearl.
There's always a few nuggets. Yep, some pearls for your tennis treasure chest.
Well, when I get my high performance coaching certification, I want this part edited. I want it edited out because it's hurting my credibility.
Yeah, imagine the success you're going to have after that. I mean, you've done well, but
yeah, you can always do better.
Yeah.
Well, here's a pearl that everybody here has heard many, many times, but I love this: is that tennis parents, you have to understand that credibility means that you're believable. Credibility doesn't mean you're truthful. But I think it's time for Yvonne. Why don't you say, Smith, shut up?
Yeah, Smith, shut up.
All right. That's a good way to end it. But Dave and Andy, thank you very much. Another podcast in the books.
It's been fun.
Okay, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Wave everybody to the camera, Yvonne. All right. Thank you, guys.